Anena iributisa, anena iributisa.
Sapoma way, anena iributisa.
Anena iributisa, anena iributisa.
Sapoma way, anena.
standing here before all of you, and I want to welcome all to this particular gathering on behalf of the Board of Action Aid and the Country Director, John Inko. I am Justin Bayo, the Head of Programs. Let me extend special welcome to all the panelists, the distinguished panelists here gathered, and in no particular order: Susan Aite, Professor John Azuma, Dr. Rose Mensah Kutin, Esther Boateng, and Eugenia Ayagiba. We are still expecting Francis Xavier, so I hear he's on his way. I think you have all indeed established your credentials within the subject matter space, and that is definitely not in doubt. This is the first in the series of planned activities to be held subsequently that Action Aid plans to host on specific subjects that are dear to our hearts. Indeed, we woke up this morning to the good news that the Affirmative Action and Gender Equity Act 2024 had been signed into law by the President. We need to celebrate, but we do not need to take our legs off the pedal, as there is still more work to be done. Whereas the Affirmative Action and Gender Equity Act has been enacted into law, we need to intensify our energy towards the enactment of the Criminal and Other Offences Amendment Bill, which is still in limbo. As some people will say, it has received a cease and desist order. The conversations today would center around these two subject matters, to which we are all entreated to listen keenly to the distinguished panelists and gather some useful insights for ourselves. I therefore wish at this point to pause, sit down myself, and listen so that the program would continue successfully. Thank you very much.
Please, let's appreciate Mr. Justin Bayo. He is the head of programs here at Action Aid Ghana. And like I said, we are not going to let time slip past us. So we are just going to get into the conversations and have a discussion on these two very important bills. My name is Kojo Mensah. I work with GH1 Television, and I'm really excited to be a part of the conversation this morning. And thankfully, we have quite a number of people also joining us online, because you're streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube at Action Aid Ghana. So for those of you here in the studios, I will entreat you to send the message across. Let's share the link. It's not just for prayers, it's also for things like this. So kindly share the link on Facebook, share the YouTube link as well. Just Action Aid Ghana on Facebook and on YouTube, and then the rest of the world can get to be a part of this, because this conversation we are going to have this morning is very, very important. There is a reason why we are having that conversation, and so I would entreat you to help us make sure that the world gets to know of our conversations this morning. Now, we are quickly going to go into one of the bills that Mr. Bayo talked about, the Affirmative Action Bill. As it stands now, yes, we've picked word, but we are awaiting official communication from the presidency on this particular matter. And I understand why we are excited, because we have fought so hard to get to this point. And so the final lap, which would be the presidential assent, will be the icing on the cake for us. And so quickly, let me introduce my panelists for this particular one. And let me first of all introduce Madam Susan Aite. She's the Acting Executive Director of the Federation of Women Lawyers. She's an experienced executive director with a demonstrated history of working in the legal services industry with enviable skills in non-profit organizations, team building, human rights, and gender equality. Now, she played a very crucial role in the transformative action for gender equality project funded by the European Union of Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Madam Susan Aite to take her seat. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for joining us. Also to join the panel this morning is Dr. Rose Mensah Kutin. She is a Ghanaian gender advocate and professional journalist. She's currently the West Africa Regional Director for Abantu for Development, and with over 2 decades of experience in gender, human rights, and social justice, she's been a vocal advocate for empowerment. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Rose Mensah Kutin.
Hello, hello.
Please keep clapping for Doc. Aha. If you don't clap, Doc might not sit for me. Doc, welcome. And also to fill the next seat, we have Madame Eugenia Ayagiba, forgive me. She's a women's rights and campaigns manager. She's also a seasoned development practitioner with a wealth of experience in women's rights advocacy, program management, and grant administration. Now, currently, she serves as the women's rights manager here at Action Aid Ghana. She plays a very pivotal role in shaping and implementing gender-focused initiatives that advance the rights and empowerment of women and girls. Now, her extensive background working with internationally funded programs has made her a strong advocate for gender equality, economic justice, and social protection for marginalized communities. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Eugenia Ayagiba. And need I add that I recently met her at a function at Kempinski. Okay, right. So, ladies, thank you so much for joining me this morning. And I'm sure that as excited as I am, so are you with regards to the conversation we'll be having this morning. So let me quickly delve into the issues. And let me start with you, Susan. Basically, we are talking about this bill. We've fought the bill. In fact, we've put in place a lot of mechanisms to get where we are. What would you say are the major highlights of the bill that you believe are very crucial for achieving the ultimate objective of the bill?
Okay, thank you very much. Is it Kojo you said?
Kojo.
All right, great. Right, so basically we are looking at, for us, women in leadership. So we're talking about women in politics, women in governance, and we're talking about, women in the corporate sector, because the private sector is also, very much a part of it. And we are also talking about, women in the security services. We are talking even about women in the media, basically. Yes, so if you look at the 10 critical areas of, the Women's Manifesto, it is something that we always make a reference to, as somebody would say, our constitution, basically, for women's rights movement, yes. So those are some of the key areas that, we are looking at. So when we talk about women in, governance, or women in politics, we all know that, we have 275, seats. I always say, imagine having, a classroom or a number of classrooms with 275, people. But 4 of them are occupied by, just men, and just 1 is occupied by, women. So basically, you have 4 classrooms full of men and 1 classroom full of just women. And that imbalance, is certainly something that needs to be rectified. And we are looking at the historical imbalances that, as a country, we have actually, we've actually had. And we always say that, in 1965, Sajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was the person who actually began all this, around affirmative action, where we because of his affirmative action, we were able to get a lot more women, about 10 women, in parliament at that time. But since then, it has gone downhill, because, of course, you've said that, military coup takeovers have actually, set us back. But now we have, democratic systems in place. So what do we say? Why is it that, in this current dispensation, we can only boast of 40 women, which is less than, almost 10% of women, in parliament? And when the parliamentarians are here, they will tell you that for some even committees, there's no woman represented. There's no woman's perspective. It's all the male perspective. And when we talk about development, you're talking about both females and males as well. And so if we can have, the female perspective as well, that then we are talking about, advancing, human development for both men and women anyway, because people think when you say gender, gender is solely just women. No, when we say gender, we are talking about both men and women. We just need to be targeted because we all have different interests, different, perspectives as well. If we worked with, women living with HIV and AIDS, that's a disease that, it's not seen, basically. But they have their own unique, needs, and they need to be targeted. We talk about women with disabilities. That is quite obvious. We are not homogeneous, both women and men. We are not. So how do we make sure that we are responsive to the needs of all these, groups? And that is why we have actually, worked so hard. And I would say that there are some, pioneers who have actually worked so hard, to get this bill to come to fruition. And I never forget Mrs. Elizabeth Akpalu for the work that she's done, wherever she is. And then, of course, other women's groups, have all worked together. Abantu has done well, actually, quite excellently in getting the women's movement to really champion, this cause. It has been a very tortuous journey. And I always say, if you want to actually ensure that we have affirmative action in place, you have to put policymakers, sometimes all men, in a room and teach them gender. Yes, because if you have engaged with them, understanding of gender is very different. Right. They have limited understanding about what gender is all about. And you need to take them through sometimes gender scenarios. Sometimes we use a scenario where a woman takes, the place of a man takes the place of a woman, and let them see the kind of roles that women play, even at the household level, the kind of work they need to do before they can even get back to their own workspace. And then in the long run, let them know that at the end, if you wanted to change, there's a scenario like that. The woman becomes a man, the man becomes a woman. At the end of the day, the man gets pregnant as a woman and can't transform back, into. So the simple things that let them understand that when it comes to, women's rights or women's issues, they are, things that are very peculiar about women that need to be targeted, that we need to, take cognizance of when it comes to resource allocation. How do we, allocate resources to men and to women? We've done some work with Netrite before, working with women farmers, looked at, the government's policy on planting for food and jobs, and realized that women are actually have been left behind. So if you have an affirmative action, act in place, it helps you to measure whatever policy or judge whatever policy is out there according to that standard. And so if it falls short of that standard that is within the law, then you know that we can do some advocacy, around it. So I'm going to stop here because I think I'm talking too much.
No, but I understand the passion with which we speak about these issues. But thank you, Susan. But let me come to you, Eugenia. Now, Action Aid Ghana, in fact, Action Aid I know is a social justice organization. So how does the bill in its form align with the objectives of social justice and equity within our broader societal spectrum? You can, yes, I think it's on.
Is it on?
Right, it's on.
Hello? Okay, thank you very much. So as you rightly said, Action Aid is a social justice organization. And for us, key in our programming is women's rights, women's empowerment, ensuring that there is equity in all forms of governance, education, and our private lives. And as I've rightly said, women's rights is key there. So it aligns with what we do in the sense that when you look at the bill as it is, it highlights the elimination of structural barriers that affect women's inclusiveness in governance and social in our political space or even economic space. So that is how it aligns with Action Aid's women's rights or social justice as well. Again, when you look at the bill, it highlights the accountability mechanisms in there. That sort of states that institutions will be held accountable as in whether they are meeting the gender parity rule that is in the bill. Because as the bill stands right now, it states that 40%, it gives a mandatory 40% quota for most institutions in terms of women representation at leadership, at work, and then all that. So I think that is how it aligns with that, because for us, we've been working towards how do we ensure that the patriarchal systems within our country, within our system, within structures that we work in, how do we break those barriers and ensure that women are empowered? How do we ensure that through the social justice that we all are aiming for, through this affirmative action, women, there will be equitable distribution of resources amongst women in all spheres of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eugenia. So let me come to Dr. Rose. And talking about, you touched on the fact that, well, there are accountability mechanisms in there. And I'd like Dr. Rose to throw some light on those accountability mechanisms that are there to ensure that we are able to get the benefits, reap the right benefits of the bill. Please, you can pass on the microphone to her.
Thank you very much. Talking about accountability, first of all, I would want to highlight the importance of a country like Ghana being in sync with agreements, conventions that we have signed on to at the international level, at the Africa regional level, and also even within our constitution. And so the accountability is about making sure that the documents we have signed on to when we attend conferences and meetings are complied with through the laws and policies that we formulate in our country. So we have the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. We have the SDG 5, which is on gender equality, and so many other documents. And so that means that we are trying to be accountable to those things that we have signed on for years that we have not held ourselves accountable to. Then in terms of the bill which has been passed into an act now, you have a system that is going to be put in place, and that is the committee. Originally, we were aiming for a commission, which is able to bite much more than a committee. But you know that when it comes to the lawmaking process, it's a give and take process. So we have agreed that a committee would be able to get the work done. And the committee will make sure that institutions, both private and public, will really intentionally put in place measures that will comply with the provisions of the affirmative action law. And so, for instance, we are saying that from 2025 to the year 2026, all the institutions, both public and private, must ensure that there is a percentage of about 30, a minimum percentage of about 30, filling leadership positions or occupying spaces within that institution. And then from 2027 to 2029, we are expecting that this will rise to 35%. And the end point is 2030, where we are hoping that there will be real parity. That is 50%, 50% in terms of representation and participation by women and men. And this is in compliance or it's in compliance and accountable to what we have agreed on at the African Union level, where we are saying, and also, of course, at the UN level, where we are saying that there should be gender parity by 2030. And so the legal framework that is being established through this law is seeking to ensure that we progressively move as a country to be in alignment with international best practices, and also to ensure that when we talk about democracy, we are talking about the well-being of human beings, who are basically women and men, and therefore that any inequalities, any disparities, any imbalances are taken into consideration to move the country towards a position of equality and balance, so that whether it is about work sharing, whether it is about positions, leadership positions, we are in alignment with internationally established best practices.
And it's quite curious because what you're saying looks very beautiful. And for me, if by 2050 we get there, I'll be so excited to have a 50-50 or 2030 I'll have a 50-50 thing. Because I have said personally that I prefer working under female bosses than male bosses. Yes, I am sure you also have your reasons, but I prefer working under female bosses because I feel they are better managers compared. I mean, sorry to the male bosses saying this, but I want to find out, people really comply with what is inspected and not what you expect from them. So are there provisions that would really bite people to be able to comply when this is finally out there? When we know that this is the law, you are to ensure that you have about 30% people, females in this role. How do we ensure that we really get people to do that?
Yes, and that is why there is a provision as an incentive for instance, if you take the private sector, there are incentives to encourage private sector institutions to comply. And so if you're a private sector institution and at the end of a particular period, you are able to show that you have met the targets set in the law, you are incentivized with different things. And then if you are an institution, whether state or private institution, and you don't comply according to the provisions in the law, you are also sanctioned. And so there are checks and balances within the law. Those that encourage institutions and individuals or wherever you find yourself to comply with the law, you are applauded and you are incentivized. Whereas those who don't comply are sanctioned. I think that is very important, especially in a country like Ghana, where sanctions is frowned upon. That much of the time, if somebody is doing something bad, and even you speak about it, it becomes a problem. It's like, we just gloss over wrongdoing. But this law is going to ensure that that does not happen. And when you have provisions like that, people are encouraged to do the right thing, because everybody, even if you are a wicked person, you are a bad person socially, you want to be in line, or you want to align yourself with goodness. I don't think anybody wants to be seen or known as a bad citizen. But when there are no sanctions, where there are no checks and balances, and where people don't work intentionally to make sure that the right thing is done, that is where the sanctions will come in. And I think that the women's rights organizations in Ghana have worked so hard, and we have organizational systems in place that will make sure that this compliance mechanism, these sanctions and incentivization will work to an extent where we can make the progress that we need. And if I can add this one too, I think the issue of affirmative action must be taken seriously, because it's not something that you do all the time. It is something you do when you see that there is an issue at stake. And so at a certain point, when we see that the nation is moving according to the terms and conditions set by the law, we will look back, we will monitor and evaluate and see that maybe we have gotten to a point where we need to put brakes on our actions. And so it's not going to make anybody feel weaker in terms of our social relationships, in terms of the relationships between women and men. There's an established inequality, and that is what we are trying to break.
So is the established inequality, that is what we are seeking to break. And let me come back to you, Susan. I mean, when we're talking about the bill, and that would be assented to, or has been assented to, has become an act, and all of that, what would you say would be how we are going to measure the success of the bill act and its impact on the target groups?
Okay, so just before I answer that, I just want to add a little bit on to what Kutin has said, and I think this is a platform for us to learn. So basically, when we talk about the compliance for the private sector in particular, it says that, an employee who complies with the quota provisions of the Act within the first 12 months of the coming into force of this Act, or after the first 12 months of the coming into force of this Act, may apply to the minister responsible for finance for a tax incentive. So I think that, this is, there are quite a few things here which I encourage us all to take a look at. But this is one of, the incentives that, people in the private sector will also benefit from. So coming to your question, can you just go over again, please?
So I'm asking, how are we going to measure the success?
Okay, all right. Okay, so basically there's going to be a committee that will monitor whatever is being done. It's a lot of work, but I think it can be done. We need the political will to do it. And I think that the monitoring will just not be done by maybe the Gender Equality Committee. It's a lot of work that, has to be shared. Civil society organizations have done well in actually monitoring the work that many of the government institutions do. Let me just make a reference to the scorecard that Abantu actually has in place. This was a scorecard to measure gender equality, amongst political parties, and it was not just done for a year, but it was done over the years, and you could track, the political parties that actually had done well when it comes to their gender policies, and in a way it has actually galvanized them to come up with manifestos that have that are really detailed when it comes to their gender issues, and so those are some of the things that civil society does that helps institutions like like these to be able to come up with sound policies that would be more responsive and targeted. So monitoring is going to be done. We'll track whatever everybody is doing, and like I said, it's a big job, but it's something that quite a lot of civil society organizations will get involved in. I mean, you can track what, for instance, the mining sector is doing. You can track what the banking sector is doing. We can track what the judicial service actually is also doing when it comes to gender issues. You can track the security sector. So there's a lot of areas that we can look at and track and ensure that these institutions are complying actually with the act. So certainly they will be measured. And, like we have just read, the incentives will be there, certificates even is going to be given by the Gender Ministry to organizations that are actually doing well when it comes to, gender, equality issues or gender equity issues, yeah.
And I think when the certificates are given, they should start with my house. Because I'm married to a female wife, and I have 3 daughters, and so I've been grossly outnumbered in my own home. But talking about one of the things that I heard was toxic patriarchy. And the fact that our society has been built around these cultural and social norms that seems to glorify patriarchy, and then all of those issues. So let me come to you, Eugenia. I mean, you have been doing a lot of work in this space. I mean, ActionAid Ghana has been doing a lot of work in collaboration with other agencies. And my concern then would have to be at the local levels, when you go to the rural areas where we see these things happen the most. What role would we have to now assign traditional leaders? Does the bill as it stands provide avenues where traditional leaders and authorities can also get to be a part of it and champion the cause?
Thank you very much. So when you look at the bill as it stands, it's not just targeted as institutions or formalized institutions, but even we talk about governance at the local level, then you are talking about our traditional leaders who are gatekeepers at the community level. So when you look at some of the things that the bill as it stands does, it's sort of going to shift power. It's going to ensure that traditional perceptions and roles that are given, people take a second look at them. It is going to change people's perceptions about these things. So for our traditional leaders, it is crucial that we, as civil society, as government, as institutions, sort of make them aware to understand the bill as it stands. Because when you look at in Ghana or even the bill as it stands, most people don't understand what is the bill about. What is the affirmative action bill about? Most people don't just get it. So then you get people saying that, oh, it is supposed to ensure that women surpass men and all that. But then for us, affirmative action is about an equal playing field where everybody gets an opportunity within the system that we operate. So for our traditional leaders, it is for them to be aware of the bill, for them to try and change the systems, patriarchal systems, even at a traditional level. And I think it's already happening, but in subtle ways, where we now have women being installed as queen mothers, especially in the northern sector of the country, where in other words, you wouldn't have seen it there in the first place. And then also ensuring that when opportunities are available within the community, they make sure that women participate within there. So I think the catch there is, as Dr. and Susan have said, with all these accountability mechanisms, it's up to us to also ensure that our traditional rulers are accountable to the Affirmative Action Bill as it stands right now. And then also the traditional rulers would also have to engage in the implementation of the Affirmative Action Bill, so that we don't leave it just to the formal institutions and political parties. Because when you look at the perception now, it looks like the Affirmative Action Bill is just for political parties, but it goes beyond that. So the traditional rulers, our stakeholders in the communities really have a key role to play, especially in transforming people's perceptions about the Affirmative Action Bill and how it works.
And talking about perceptions, I mean, there are some who say that, well, once you pass this bill into law, like you mentioned, we are going to have reverse discrimination. Now women will feel on top and men under them. If you talk, say, haven't you heard about the Affirmative Action Bill? I am now the woman of the house and all of that. So these are all misconceptions that thrive due to people's ignorance, I should say, about the details of this particular bill. How do we ensure that we solve, how do we cure that? Rose, Doc.
Well, I think we all know that every society, and it's not just Ghana, every society in the world is structured in a patriarchal way, with issues that are seen to be much more masculine-oriented, being highlighted and much more valued than issues that are less so. And I think we have seen through studies and experiences that it does not augur well for society, because it operates in ways that undermine those who are less able to be visible, who are less able to have their voices heard. And so you have disparities in all spheres of life in society, from the lowest level to the highest level. And therefore, this is where policies or laws like affirmative action comes in. To what extent can we make sure that the two ways of acting in society, the two ways of relating in society, both masculinities and femininities, are able to interact in ways that make society much more realistic? Because we all have tendencies to be able to access power, and there are situations where we are not able to access power, but we are much more vulnerable. And so vulnerability and power sharing and all of that are good, because they are aspects of who we are as human beings. So how do we merge these two elements of who we are as human beings, such that our society will reflect the reality of how we have been brought up, how we have been socialized, and so on? And so that is what this is about. That it is not the case that one group of persons called men must be the ones holding power, and one group of persons called women should be the recipients of the of power, so to speak, of the expressions of power. And so we need to continuously work to enhance awareness about the fact that it is okay for a man to bath the child when he wakes up in the morning. It is okay for the woman to do something that originally has been assigned to men. And so that kind of blending is what must happen in society to make it much more easier for all of us to enjoy life on earth before we go to the other side of the world. In any case, there are societies where, because they have been much more responsive to issues of gender equality and women's rights and so, you see that the society moves on easily. I mean, life becomes easier, and men and women do not see each other as enemies. Therefore, that a man will see a woman, and if the woman talks too much, then it means that the man must beat up that woman, and so on. Even it happens in our households, where male and female, as husband and wife, become very confrontational with each other just because maybe the woman spoke out against something that is not auguring well for the household. So all that we are aiming at is that there should be acceptance that all of us can contribute to the well-being of society, that if a woman is vocal, it does not mean she's evil, that women have ideas and voices and concerns about their livelihoods and the livelihoods of their children and their family members, and they should be given the right, or they should have the right to bring this out so that society becomes better. So a lot of education, a lot of awareness creation, and men must also be willing to give up some of their power, and women must also be ready to take up some of the power that is given out by the men. So we are talking about a society that is much more cohesive, much more inclusive, much more accepting of the differences between women and men, and then getting that blend that will enable us to move forward.
So for me again, I don't have any power in my home. But men, are you willing to give up your power? Some. And the men are quiet. Women, are you ready to take up the power that the men give up? Yes. Hey. But are there best practices that we can look at and say, oh, it's working in this society? Look at this society. See how that society is developing, so that it would serve also as motivation for us. Dr. Kuti.
Yes. So maybe I would want to cite some practices during the before the colonial period, where men and women had a way of playing complementary roles. Even in our local communities, you go into some houses, especially those communities that have had the opportunity to benefit from several gender-responsive programs. You find the men very much responsive within the households, where a man may be taking care of a baby while the wife is doing something else, where you get testimonies from men saying that, oh, because I now understand that actually I have to be supportive of my wife and so on. Now on our farm, I have made it possible for my wife to be seen as a producer and not just somebody who consumes the things that we produce. So these are all good evidences of some of the things that are needed to ensure that both women and men are treated equally or are appreciative of each other. Then if we take some of our countries in the Western world, the Scandinavian countries, they have put in place measures that are very responsive to the well-being of women. And so even when recently, one woman resigned recently, but she had been a prime minister, and she was able to have her child and even take the child to the, was it parliament or wherever. And these are good practices, because children are the foundation of our society, and yet women are denied access to certain spaces just because they are the primary carers of the children that we bear because of our biology. And then even if you take your mind back to the some of the policies that Kwame Nkrumah put in place, making affirmative action a major principle that enabled women who were then not so very well educated to enter into the first Constituent Assembly. And that enabled women to have voices, because women had demonstrated that they were interested in the independence struggle. And they had offered their property, they had offered their time, they had cooked food, they had made sure that when the men stood on the platform, they were well dressed and all of those things. And that enabled us to have a space in the Constituent Assembly for us to recognize the role that women had played. And so rewarding people who stand up to speak against some of these inequalities is also very important. And this should continue, because if we had followed the example of Nkrumah, maybe we will not be sitting here talking about another affirmative action. It will just have continued. Again, during the colonial period, if you were a woman and you were working in the civil service and you became pregnant, you had to go on leave. And when you went on leave and you had the baby, you did not have the chance to come back to take your job. That was the colonial policy at the time. Nkrumah came and he dismantled that. And now look at our ministries and so on. So the process has been ongoing.
Okay.
And now we have to do more because a lot of women are in school, in the tertiary institutions, entering previously branded male-dominated areas. And so they must be recognized and they must be given a chance to give out the things they have studied to make our society better.
Yeah. Interesting. I think that deserves a clap. And for those of us also watching on social media, you can send your clapping emojis so that we can see your virtual clap to what the conversation we are having this morning. And so, like I said earlier, we are streaming live on Facebook, also streaming live on YouTube. So please share the link. Let others get to benefit from the conversation. Share it to your pastors, your imams, your traditional priests, because I'm coming to a question about religion and how that is also playing a part in what we are facing. And Susan, let me...
Okay, so I just want to take the power off in your hands a little bit.
Okay, I agree.
And I'm very, very glad that, Dr. Rose, made reference to what is happening within our own communities. Mm-hmm. And so since this is a thought series, I just want to give you an example of what, happened within a particular space in the northern region when we were working there. And in this particular space, we were actually training women to become community paralegals. And in fact, for that context, we had to call them sister watch committees because of the backlash that, was emerging. Now, this is a man who is from a particular tribe who says, listen, as a man from this tribe, there's no way that I'm going to help my wife in the kitchen. We don't cook. That is part of our traditional norms, basically. So then what happens is that there's a situation around the water, the borehole, where there's some confusion. So the chief of that particular community calls on the sister watch group now to come into his palace to sit and then come up with a solution to the challenge. Now he begins to see that his wife her status in the community has actually, been enhanced. And then he begins to set up and says, listen, if my wife is now, part of, a committee that is supposed to provide solutions to problems within the community, it means that I must be a model husband. And so now what happens, the transformation that takes place, which sometimes people think is negligible, but for us who work in that space, it's so crucial and important and significant for us. Now, he doesn't wait for the woman to come from the farm to start, the fire. He starts the fire. He puts the pan on the, the sticks, the wood that we use, and then waits. I think he's able to time it so well that the woman comes as soon as he's able to put, the pot of water, on the fire. The woman comes then to continue, and both of them actually finish the cooking. And then not only that, they both sit down and eat from the same plate. Now, within that community, it is unheard of for a man to sit with his wife and eat from the same bowl. And so these are some of the transformations that take place when we are talking about gender equality and gender balance, basically, yes. So I'm very glad she gave us good examples from here. And we also have good examples that we can also talk about. I remember she's always told me that, Susan, if you're looking for examples, don't travel too far. Just look within the communities and within our own local context. Right. And you'd have excellent, examples to share. Yeah.
Amazing.
I think I also want to add just one.
Yeah. The spirit of
in
examples 2000, taking my power.
Just in Ghana, 2008, I think after the presidential elections, it was realized that we didn't have a lot of women in parliament. So I think the women parliamentarians gathered themselves and went to President Kufuor and even gave him names of people they thought could be appointed into the government. And from there, he appointed a few women. I think, do you remember who was the person in charge of industries or something like that? The person was a woman. And when you look at it since then, most political parties, even though we keep on saying that it shouldn't be just a tokenism position that they give to women, at least ensure that when they are giving out these positions, women are part of it. So I think just in our sphere of political spheres, some subtle changes are being made, but we want more of it.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because even in the filing of nominations for this upcoming elections, we've seen the numbers. We're told that, well, we've reduced the cost. The political parties reduced the cost for filing for women, EC, and all of that, yet we are not seeing more women troop in there. Is it that the reduction is not enough? Or is it that women themselves, in some cases, are not ready to enter into the stiff arena of politics, where you know how our politics is here, severe backlash for the least of things done? What really is preventing that from happening? We've seen a lot of women at the top echelons.
I think it boils down to our traditional norms and rules we keep on talking about. That is the basis of it. When you go back, way back, and even now into some of our societies, you realize that the way the female is brought up, you are not exposed to a lot of opportunities to build you up, to strengthen you, to take up these opportunities that you are talking about. So mostly when you go in a male-dominated home, you realize that even when there are decisions to be taken, it's men that take it. The female is hardly even consulted when decisions are going to be taken.
Opinion is always a man.
Thank you. So in that context, you realize that the female, the inequality there is that she's not even trained to take up leadership roles beyond just keeping the home and then all that. So that is one of the things that's there. The other thing too is that it's not a level playing field. The opportunities, yes, they said they've reduced the cost and all that, but even in the selection process, what is the criteria there? What is the criteria there for that has been put there? As somebody, I remember one of the elections, a lady, I think from the OT region won, I think for the NDC parliamentary, and people were like, how can you bring this woman, she can't even read and write, to parliament? When we are in a country where opportunities in terms of education is given to boys and less for girls, even if I want to take up that role, I can't speak English in parliament. How do you expect me to go in for that position? Again, opportunities and fairness. You know, our political system is fraught with money. How many women can raise that money, even if you want to go into that? And I give myself as an example. Back in the university, I was in NUCS, and then I decided to stand for the secretary for NUCS, and no woman had ever stood for that position. But when I entered, I realized that it wasn't a fair playing field, right. Because for me, it was just student elections, it was just advocacy and all that. But then, goodness, what goes in there? It wasn't really that. As a female, I couldn't go out as much as my male counterparts could go out to schools, to places to go and campaign and all that. But that was what was. So that it's not a level playing field. A lot of challenges, opportunities, it's just not given to females to thrive in that sector because of the criteria and perceptions that's out there.
Interesting. But does religion, and Susan, I'll give that to you, in terms of how our society is. I mean, we are a very religious country. I mean, at 12 a.m., everybody is joining something to pray. On Fridays, people are going somewhere to pray. During the course of the week, people are also going to certain shrines to pray. So at every function, there is prayer being said. We are very religious. Has that also impacted? And going forward, how do we jump over that hurdle?
Yeah, that's right. It has certainly impacted because even from the work that we do, you find that when you have cases that is coming from the faith-based, arena, you find a lot of, male hegemony, patriarchy, misogyny, all emerging from that particular, space. And I remember that I did some work for, a faith-based, for a group that was working with a faith-based organization. And things are changing. Now, they were actually trying to address, or not trying, but they were going to address gender-based violence within their faith. And they were looking at, raising up, what we would call paralegal. Some people would call them combats. But they were looking at coming up with people within their faith who would be able to actually handle, gender-based violence and domestic violence issues that emerge. So this is an example of some of the transformation taking place, but certainly it is, a given that we've had a lot of issues from, faith-based institutions. Basically, they're basing their opinions, their views on what, maybe the holy scriptures or the Quran or whatever actually saying. But when I was doing this work for this particular organization, I realized that, pardon me for being a little bit more religious, but even Jesus Christ was a human rights advocate. Basically, when the woman who was accused of adultery came, he wrote in the sand that if any of you, is without sin, then cast the first stone. Now, that was, a protective measure to protect that woman from being, killed. And so if we would actually, study whatever, books that we are using, we'll find out that within those books that we are using are human rights principles aligned to even the international human rights, instruments that we have signed on or ratified as a country. And come from that end and begin to, engage with them, because you ask a question about going forward. So come from that end, let them know, let them see that they have principles that are aligned, to international human rights instruments that can be used from the human rights-based approach to actually ensure that there's gender, equity or gender equality within their own organizations. And then those are the things that really, talk to them, and so they would actually pick up on it. So because if you do studies on international human rights, they talk about, how do you translate, human rights into the local context, or how do you translate human rights into the vernacular? And so then the scholarship has been that if you look at, the narrative around some of our cultural, norms, you would also find that there are certain principles within our culture that are also aligned to human rights principles that you can use as an entry point to really engage, with communities on how to ensure that, human rights is protected, human rights is promoted as well within the community space. And so likewise import that same, principle into the faith-based, organizations, and you will find out that they will be more accepting, more receptive of you as they are able to identify that, look, this is a principle based on, our Quran, based on, our Bible, that actually promotes and protects, the human rights, of the vulnerable. Right. And that is one way in which we can move forward in ensuring that, we are also promoting human rights or women's rights within, the faith-based organizations space.
Eugenia, still on the issue of religion, I mean, when you go to the field, how much of a threat or a challenge does that pose to the fight?
Thank you. I think when you go into the field, until there is an understanding by these key stakeholders or the religious leaders, there is always a pushback in terms of affirmative action, in terms of women's rights activities or women empowerment, gender empowerment activities. So the pushback is there because there is no understanding. The pushback is there because sometimes also it's about what have people seen. When you go into our books, when you go into our schools, our curricula, you realize that most of the things that are being taught, examples are mostly men. Examples are mostly men. Even when you go onto the pulpit, sometimes most of the examples are Jeremiah, Isaiah, Joseph,
Joshua.
thank you. But you hardly see women. But so that is it. It's about the narrative. Who writes the narrative? Who is giving the narrative? That is really the pushback when it comes to religion. But from my experience, when the religious bodies really understand what you are talking about, you realize that they sort of come on board the train and try to even help you change things there. I think a positive example is in the Catholic Church, if I can put it that way. At first, women were not allowed as mass service. But now when you go, you see mass service on the pulpits as well. So I think it's more about understanding. The pushback really comes when they don't understand the bill. So it's up to us, it behoves on us all sitting here to ensure that everybody understands the bill as it stands and what it is meant for. I think that's what I would say.
We need to understand the bill and what it seeks to cure. And I'm sure that you have a lot of questions here. I've seen some on social media, so I'll go and pick those questions and put them to the panelists. And definitely we'll do some proper analysis to those questions and get you answers. But let me come to you, Dr. Kutin, still on the issue of religion. Now that we are nearing a possible signing of the bill into law, how do we navigate the terrain of religion to be able to get the message across?
I think change and transformation are things that nobody can stop. They are processes that ultimately have to happen. And depending on the path that a country or a people choose, they will end at a certain point. And I would want our religious leaders to choose the end point of freedom, of enhanced voice, and of equality. Much more equality than inequality. And Eugenia said something about, it's about the narrative. So many things are changing in our society. And the churches have no choice but to also change. If you take some of the churches, the religious practices and so on, you will see that those who really want to grow and who want to be heard and who want to be influential have been changing along the way ever since the women's movement started growing and growing. The women's movement has come to stay. And if you take the hierarchy of men and the way men have an easier way of accessing power, you see that men who don't want trouble are complying with principles of women's rights,
I don't want trouble.
gender equality, and living a life that is much more accepting that there's another group of people, there are individual people called women and girls, and that they may have different perspectives, different needs, different interests, and they have decided that that is the path that we are moving on to the long term. And so people are complying. In the same way, those churches or the religious groups that want to be retrogressive will not survive. You can talk about even geography. There are so many countries that used to be there in the pre-colonial era, the colonial period and so on, which have disappeared because they were not listening to the voices of citizens, of ordinary citizens. And we women, even though, of course, we are not the same everywhere, we tend to be the most vulnerable in society, in addition to persons with disability and what have you. And now there is a movement around these issues. And when there is a movement, it cannot be stopped. And the movement is growing. And it is growing in ways that reflects the realities on the ground, per country, per region, whatever. And so it will grow. So if you don't want trouble, be in compliance with the road towards greater equality.
And like one politician said, the movement is stronger than apartheid.
Kojo, I just wanted to add that even within the religious setting, if equal opportunities are given to women, women strive in there. The example I want to give is, our school leadership structures in the country, you have SRC president being a male, the school prefect. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, the school prefect is who? A male.
Yes.
And the female is always the assistant.
Girls prefect.
Sorry, thank you. So, girls prefect. So it's more about giving opportunities and making it a level playing field for us, even in the religious setting. I'm giving this example because Action Aid, in collaboration with NORSAC, worked on a school leadership structure in the northern region, where it's predominantly a Muslim. It's predominantly Muslim. Mm-hmm. And it interests you to know that immediately the opportunity was given, where females, we changed with the schools, we looked at the leadership structure, where the school prefect and the girls prefect were both at par, and the opportunity was given. A female has been elected as an SRC president in the school. So it's about giving opportunity even within the religious sector. So just like Doctor said, the opportunity should be given even within that religious context to females to also have a level playing field to contest. And we are hoping that this leadership structure that is working so well in the northern region can be replicated across country, so that more opportunities are given to females in terms of leadership.
And I think we should give it up for our panelists this morning. And one of the things that came to mind was that God does not only call male bishops, he also calls female bishops. And in other religious sectors too, God has callings for women as well. And let me quickly go through some of your comments on social media. On Facebook, Sandra Kwao Ojiri says, topic well discussed, well done. Dorcas says, understanding of the concept is very important. The issues of gender-based violence and domestic violence need collective effort. Shadrach Soja says, wow, we are really impressed with the good work done by our leaders. Thank you. Ebenezer Junior Arthur is okay. He clapped when we asked him to clap. Imoro Zuka also clapped, and Ifya Confidence also clapped. And then Ebenezer comes back to say, exactly, for the understanding of the law, I'll suggest there should be a workshop to talk about it for there to be more understanding. And I think if such is done, we are good to go, because I've been attending Abantu's programs and talking about the Affirmative Action Bill, which will help to promote gender equity and serve as well. Thank you. So clearly, we need more engagement, more advocacy. And so at this particular point, I would like you to just take a chill pill for me and see if we have some questions for my audience here, for the panelists. If there are any questions bothering your mind, thankfully we have a lot of media people here, and so questions are welcome at this particular juncture. If you have any question, quickly show by hand. We'll get a microphone to you, and then you can ask the question for my panelists to deal with. Any questions? Okay. You have? Right, please. So please, if you could just come, can we get a microphone to her, please? Can we have someone help me with a microphone to her? Aha, right. You tell us your name and then let us know.
Okay, so my name is Margaret Asay. I would just want to touch on what Auntie Eugenia said concerning the educational policy. We had an engagement, and I remember the ways that now the policy has been a bit changed. Now, when you go to the secondary schools, the platform is given to everyone. So if they vote and the girl should win, then she is automatically the school prefect. It doesn't matter if it's a boys prefect or a girls prefect. So I think now there is a change. Thank you.
Thank you. Please kindly pass on the microphone to the other. You tell us your name, what you represent, and let us know your question or contribution.
All right. My name is Habiba Abdullah from Accra here. My question, thank you very much, our panelists. It's been very inspiring so far. My question is, in as much as we are still advocating, going out there, talking about all these issues, addressing issues of gender inequality and all that, we still have anti-rights movements, individuals and groups that are still, pushing us, yes, I would say a little back.
Pushback, right.
Yes, the pushbacks. How do we deal with them? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have, okay, please kindly pass on the microphone to, yes.
Yes, good morning, everybody. And thank you, the panelists, and really very educative. I think it is not a question,
Okay.
but I just want to make a contribution a little. There is this misconception that the women are not there, even with the passage of this law. I think this is a very big misconception because the women have indicated, I think from our panelists we have learned what the contribution of women have been throughout the years. And I said that even within the recent history of this country, this is a race, in inverted comma, the race of women, which has produced, within a short period of time, a Speaker of Parliament, 3 Chief Justices. We have produced electoral commissioners. We have produced ministers of justice, and also women who have superintended over constitutional bodies. So the issue of this misconception that the women are not there, it is going to be addressed by the presence or the existence of this law, because it is about making the structures, making enabling structures that will make it possible for women to come out and present themselves, not the issue of the absence of women to take up positions and the power. So the existence of the affirmative action bill being passed into law, that is why the women's movement fought for this for a long time, because it has created an enabling environment to allow women to come out of their shells because of the pressure you have talked about and the panelists have talked about, pressure from religious, pressure from families, pressure from households, pressure from spouses, that will make it possible for women to come out. The women are there and they are waiting.
The women
Thank
are
you
there
very
and
thank
they
you
are
very
waiting.
much.
So I saw Professor Zuma's hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say that what Auntie just said, that I don't, from where I sit, from the university context and looking at girls, the women are taking over the university. So I'm like, you don't even have to talk about giving it to them. They are going to take it over.
Okay.
Because the women are the qualified ones. I've got my workplace, when I'm looking for someone to employ, and I put the word out there, the applications that come in, the women just far outstrip the boys. So in fact, at university, I joke that the boys are becoming the endangered species. Because you look around, and it's the girls who are really doing well.
Right.
And so I am not very much concerned about that, because the girls are going to take it, whether we like it or not. So the men should just prepare for that. That's a fact.
Right.
The other thing is the religious question is a big issue. And and I'm speaking as a religious person, that if you look at our religious setup, the problem we have with women, discrimination against women in the religious setup, is because of foreign religions, Christianity and Islam. This is where the problem is. When you go to traditional religion, actually, women have been priestesses for generations. Women are allowed to be priestesses in traditional religion. And yet when it comes to Christianity and Islam, then you have this kind of discrimination. So we need to be aware that this is not our culture. And I tell my colleagues when I travel outside that, look, women not being allowed to become priests is not African. Because in the African traditional religions, women are allowed to become priestesses. So we need to be careful about this when we're talking about even the religious space also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. So I'll come back to my panelists. We take an answer to her question. the pushbacks. How do we deal with the pushbacks? Anyone can take that for me.
Basically, normally when we are doing this kind of work, we are looking for allies. So we know that we are certainly going to get, a pushback. So we identify our allies. Many a time we prefer to even identify male allies because from the experiences that we've had, and I've had one experience where we have actually allowed, a male lawyer to handle gender-based violence within a community within the Upper East region. And you could hear a pin drop when he was speaking. And they just told us that, they were listening to this particular person attentively, for they seen a man talking about, gender-based violence. That alone signaled to them that it was something that they should take seriously. Because when we started and we're talking about gender issues, we had all these funny jokes, coming around, telling us that, they didn't really understand where we're coming from, and they thought we were imposing something from the Western, culture, to them. But as soon as the man took the microphone and he began to speak, we could just sense the change, within the room. And you could, when they were even asking the questions, you could see that the shifting, in their perceptions was actually coming through as he addressed, them. So it's critical for us to get male allies. If we are able to get the male allies, you would handle and address some of these, naysayers, and that really helps a lot. So in every advocacy that we all do, we have, a plan. We know that, these are the things we need to address coming from naysayers, and we do address it. If it has to take us going on air to speak about it, it has to go into the community to engage in community conversations. We do it a lot. Community conversations bring up a whole lot of issues, from both the men's male perspective and the feminine perspective. And then we're able to contest these positions. And then before we leave, that, community dialogue meetings, you find out that, shifts have already occurred. So it's very, very critical that we have allies. If we have the allies, it will help us to deal with all the pushback that will come from the naysayers. Yes.
Okay. And Action Aid Ghana has been doing so much in line with that, ensuring that the allies are brought together and then we are dealing with the pushbacks. But there's a question here on social media, quite interesting. Someone is asking, we always talk about women inclusion, which means every woman, but why are Muslim women neglected in this advocacy? Are Muslim women neglected? Okay, so who is taking that on the panel for me?
If you, Hamida, you should be answering this question. No, because she's Muslim.
She's Muslim.
But what I know and what I have studied is that actually the Quran itself has specific texts on the important role of women in society and what must be done to, is that? Chapter 13 of the Quran, according to Auntie Amida. Yeah, that women play very important roles in society, and that women are really the fabric of society, and they should be supported to hold positions, to be able to speak out, and to be able to contribute to the well-being of citizens in society beyond themselves, their families, and so on. And so there are scholars, both female and male scholars, who spend energy and time to understand Quranic texts and to produce the true meanings of some of the texts in order to emphasize that the Quran is not against women's rights, women's equality with men, and the promotion of gender equality. So this is ongoing work which has really transformed many Islamic societies and relationships within the household. But of course, I'm not a Muslim, and therefore I'm not able to really give specific examples. But when you look at our institutions, especially the tertiary institutions, there is an astronomical increase in the numbers of young women who are increasing their space in the learning environment and who are becoming scholars, who are becoming academics, who are playing very meaningful roles in our society. Not to say that those who don't get to that level don't play meaningful roles. And in the communities also, many of the Islamic communities, women are challenging the patriarchal systems, they are challenging the discriminatory practices, and they are being supported by women's rights organizations and even our constitution, which clearly spells out in Article 17, 1 and 2, that we are all equal as far as we are in Ghana here. And therefore, they are using some of these tests to make a case for better treatment wherever they find themselves. And the fact that there's a strong movement behind them will ensure that this continues and that we will minimize the extent to which women are marginalized and discriminated against and increase the opportunities for women to assert themselves and claim their rights in the society.
Right. Okay, so, right.
Muslim women are not discriminated in this conversation because affirmative action also includes ensuring that the marginalized in our communities are also included in the work that we do. So beyond speaking on affirmative action, we also look at marginalized communities. We also look at who is being left out of the conversation. So definitely in institutions and then others, what you realize is that for some key positions that they are looking for, they would say, okay, we need this, for lack of a better word, we need this kind of person to fill that position because the person is needed. So for me, I don't think Muslims are left out of this conversation.
Right.
But then in situations where we find that it is necessary to have that balance, that is where we are talking about fairness. That is where we're talking about opportunities being given to everybody, including Muslims in the society.
Okay.
So just to add on to it,
Right.
and yes, they're actually doing a lot of work in the institutions, the tertiary institutions. They have very large Muslim, female students groups, and they maybe they are not visible enough. That's why people are saying that. But they are doing a lot of work, on the ground, when you're talking about, gender equality issues. So it's not true that they are left behind. And even when I believe that non-profits, have programs, they always involve, Muslim women in the kind of programs that they do. Yeah.
Very well. And ladies and gentlemen, please let's give it up to our panelists. I'm sure it's been a very interesting conversation, and we'll continue on social media. So please, Facebook and also on YouTube, the conversation is there. Someone is even responding to the Muslim comment on Facebook. So let's get a conversation going on social media. Ladies, thank you so much for your time. Susan, I know you are not going anywhere. You are here with me for the next conversation. But Doc, thank you so much. And then Eugenia, thank you so much. And this is the conversation we are having right here. And we want to thank Action Aid Ghana for convening this thought leadership series where we get to have conversations on very important policies, because what we are doing here is to shape policy direction. We are trying to make sure that advocacy gets there. You and I get to know better, and once we are well informed, we'll take better decisions to better our lot here in the country. Our next subject matter will be reflecting on an issue that has stayed with us. Thank you so much, Doc. Oh, please clap for them. Please clap for them. Sometimes it's easy to stay or stand outside and then, watch people talk about issues. But it's when you get to do it yourself that you know that, it's not an easy task. And so one more time for my ladies, please. Okay. So we'll be getting into the next conversation, and the next conversation is one that I'm also quite excited about because I believe strongly that we'll learn so much from it, and it's on the anti-witchcraft campaign and the role of the Criminal Offence Amendment Bill in ensuring gender equality and protection from social vulnerabilities. And we've heard about witch camps here in the country. We've seen the kind of treatment that has been given to people who are perceived to be witches. People are just labeled witches, and then inhumane treatment meted out to them. So today we're having a conversation on that. And thankfully, I also have a panel that will help me do that discussion. But please, if you have not already shared our feed on social media, I beg of you, quickly do that for me now. Share the feed on Action Aid Ghana's page on Facebook, also on YouTube. Just go on Facebook, look for Action Aid. We're streaming live there. Like the stream, share the link, and get interactive, because we read your messages out to the rest of the world. And so to help me with this conversation, I will welcome Susan back on the platform. Susan Aite, Acting Executive Director of Federation of Women Lawyers. Please, let's welcome Susan back to the platform. Yes. We also have joining us for this conversation, Professor John Azuma. Please, let's welcome Professor John Azuma. And Prof is the founding executive director of the Sane Institute. He's an ordained Ghanaian minister in the Presbyterian Church of Ghana and also associate professor of world Christianity and Islam. He's one of the conveners and a member of the Anti-Witchcraft Accusations Coalition. That's a group that has worked closely with Action Aid Ghana to push for a bill that criminalizes the practice of declaring, naming, accusing, or labeling people witches, as well as providing protection for the survivors. Professor, welcome. To also join us with this conversation, we have Madam Esther Boating from Action Aid Ghana. She is a seasoned development worker. She has over 20 years experience in development. And she's the Northern Regional Programs Manager of Action Aid Ghana. She's passionate about the development of women and girls. She's one of the conveners and also a member of the Anti-Witchcraft Accusations Coalition, a group that championed Action Aid Ghana's advocacy for zero violence against women accused of witchcraft. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, our panelists for the second session, kindly clap for them as we get into the conversations. So thankfully, I have another male here to balance the equation this time around. But let me start with you, Prof. I mean, you have been working in this space. You've been very vocal, and any media person who has not interviewed you clearly has not talked about the issues of witchcraft matters and the accusations. But how has the journey been? Because I know that we started the fight a long time ago, from 1998 thereabouts. We began this fight and all of that, till Parliament decided to pass the bill. Now awaiting presidential assent. How has the journey been?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, this has been a tough journey, but it's been a journey that we felt we cannot let it drop by again, because of some of the things that is happening. The things that are happening on the ground are very disconcerting. And a lot of the work has been done in partnership with other people, especially with this bill that we're talking about now. This was work that our institute and Action Aid Ghana took upon ourselves after the murder of the old lady in Kafaba in 2020. We decided that this was not the time to just come out and make public statements and go back to business as usual. We thought there was need to mobilize some kind of campaign and advocacy to get something really done. And I came across an article that was written by a senior lawyer in the Daily Graphic at the time, lawyer Ibrahim Mahama. And he mentioned the fact that there should be a law that should be passed by Parliament to criminalize witchcraft accusation. And I was like, this is a brilliant idea. And if nobody takes it up, it's going to just end up on the Daily Graphic. So I decided to make it a point to pursue this matter. So I wrote to the then Speaker of our Parliament, petitioned to him and said, look, we need to get a law passed. To my surprise, my biggest surprise, we got a reply. And I'm like, is this really in Ghana? That I'm getting a reply from the Speaker of Parliament? And he did, because he was also very interested in the issue. And so we actually began to mobilize Action Aid, reach out, and we like, okay, let's do this together. And we've been on that journey. We convened the meetings, we sponsored the meetings, we sponsored the team of parliamentarians to go up north, to visit the camps, to talk to the women. And some of us have been to all these camps countless times. We know the inmates there a lot. And so when we did all of this work, it took us 3 years doing this work on the ground to get Parliament to pass the bill in July last year. And I was so excited that night because the president himself had come out to make pronouncements following these murders that there must be, something must be done to stop this menace. So I was excited that this is going to get his assent immediately, only to be disappointed that the president has come up with some reasons why he could not sign the bill into law. I was devastated. And up till now, we are still pursuing that. We don't know what is holding the president from signing the bill into law. He says he has no problem with the content of the bill. Exactly. But then it's about the procedure, and it's all about the technicalities. And I am like, Mr. President, please, there are human lives at stake here. These are vulnerable people. These are voiceless people. These are our mothers and our aunties that they should not be suffering because of technicalities and procedures. Whatever the procedures are, please work through them, get this bill passed into law, and then these women will have a recourse for justice to reclaim their lives back and to have some kind of semblance of normality before even some of them pass on. Because a lot of them have already passed on in those kind of difficult situations. And quite a number of them are really old now, and most of them have told us, we hope to see this bill signed into law before we die, because they don't want their children, they don't want their grandchildren to go through what they are going through now. So, Mr. President, please, please, please sign this bill into law now for the sake of these vulnerable women.
And it's quite interesting because when you listen to the communication from the presidency, he talked about the fact that, yes, it would have some impact on the consolidated fund, for which reason it has to emanate from the government. And then, like you mentioned, he says he agrees with what is contained in the bill, but it's just that procedure. After that, have you heard anything else as to when we are likely to see, because he says the AG's office is working on it to present it to Parliament?
Yeah, as far as we know, there's been no movement. I've been checking with Parliament. We've been checking with the presidency. We've not had any movement as far as we know. There could be, and we haven't heard yet. Okay. But the issue of this consolidated funds, it came to us by surprise. As I said, when we were working through the bill, throughout the drafting stages, we sat in throughout the drafting stages. The AG office was represented. The Justice Department was represented. They were all in the room. And we drafted this bill. We went to Koforidua. We spent 3 days, line by line, word by word, went through the bill. And they were very mindful of the fact that this was a private member's bill and it should not come at the cost of the consolidated fund. And so that was all taken care of. And so if there was anything there that slipped by, and the bill went to Parliament, by the way, and I watched the deliberation in Parliament. It was very vigorous. I was very impressed that night to see the way Ghanaian parliamentarians engaged that bill. I was really impressed. They didn't just take it lying down. They made some substantive, very good changes, amendments to the draft. And it was passed. So to hear that the AG's office was coming up with some concerns, and the Ministry of Justice was coming up with some, I was very surprised. Because we were in the room together. Why didn't they raise these concerns at that point for it to be taken care of? So I feel that there is something more than just those concerns, if there were any concerns at all, coming from those quarters. I strongly believe that sometimes there could be some powers behind the scenes. There could be some religious groups. There could be some even powerful chiefs behind the scenes who are putting pressure for this bill not to see the light of day. We were told, when we were working on this, that, well, you can go on and work on it. We will make sure it doesn't see the light of day. And some chiefs told us that. Some religious people told us that. So we believe that in the political season, every political party, they are looking for votes, And if the chiefs speak up, if the religious leaders threaten, some politicians will just hold back. And that is what some of us believe are the real reasons behind this. But I want to say again to the president, Mr. President, with your credentials as a legal person, with your pedigree, and somebody who is such a progressive attorney and has had these chambers for years, you are in your second term. Sign this bill, it will become a legacy that you are leaving for posterity with your name under it. He should sign this. Don't let people hold you from signing this bill. Because this bill, if the president signs it, he is going to be remembered not just in Ghana, but across the world for ending this practice. Ghana is the only country with witch camps in the whole world. Ghana is the only country. If this bill is signed, this president will be writing his name into the history books, and he should do that.
Let me come to Susan before I come to you, Esther. Now, talking about the legal technicalities for which reason this bill has not received presidential assent, how do we marry that against human rights abuse and what these women have to suffer? Where do we draw the line?
That's a difficult question. Where do we draw the line? Basically, I was looking at, Article 106 and Clause 8, which talks about, the president assenting bills. And basically, there's one he has to do within 7 days. There's another he has to, if he's not too happy with some aspects of it, he can pass it on to the Council of State. They look at it. And then that also has a certain period of time. But all in all, within 3 months, basically, the bills that are, approved by Parliament ought to have been signed, by him. So it's a bit, it's quite disconcerting that this particular bill, has taken this long because it was approved of last year, and it should have been passed by now. So if you for your second question, your B part, which if I was writing WASI, I'd be looking at, the B part is talking about basically how do we marry the two. It's all, there are so many, because incidentally I did my thesis on the witchcraft issue, and there's, if you look at it, there's a plethora of human rights abuses within this particular space. If we are talking about the right to movement, the right to life, right to housing, so many things, and even to the extent that even there's another strand which has to do with sending young girls to serve these women. So customary servitude is another issue, which is a very, 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 a gross rights violation of young women, where they have to leave, their own families, leave their own, schooling, and then end up, in the camp where there's stigma, there's discrimination. Sometimes they have to work for hours, to go and sell maybe bananas, hawk bananas, something to bring back, the profit to take care of themselves and also maybe their grandmothers. So it defies reason why this has not been actually passed. And then another strand is where even children are born within the camps. You go to some of the camps and you have children from as young as, toddlers, babies, to 18 years, and they are growing up within these ascetic conditions. And the terrain is so difficult, basically, because they have actually been pushed back, into difficult areas. So what is it that is preventing someone who actually, like, Professor said, is a human rights advocate, very progressive at that, and yet has still refused to assent, this particular bill. Because if you look at the human rights issues, like I said, apart from, the women, there are also the children. We were the first to sign on to, the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And so basically there are so many things within, the Children's Act that we are not even complying, with when it comes to the young children who are, serving as customary, servants for, their grandmothers, basically. So it defies reason, basically.
But the argument is legal from the presidency.
But you brought in the issue of even human rights. Human rights instruments, we have signed on to all of them. There's a convention against torture. There's a case of torture going on. There is, the ICCPR, International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. There is the one on Convention on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights, because they lose their livelihood. And mind you, there are some women there who, had thriving businesses, but because they were accused of being, witches, they've had to leave, a very profitable income, and now they are living just on handouts, basically. Do you understand? So the human rights argument, cannot be argued against. Our national constitution itself has all these aspects of it within it. And when you talk about international human rights, talking about not just the international conventions, we have the African regional systems as well. We have the ECOWAS. We've signed on to all these things. And so as a state and as a country, we are obliged to ensure that we modify any cultural practices that impinge or that infringe, upon the rights of our citizens. So we don't have any excuse not to have signed, this into bill, basically. Yes.
Interesting. Now let me come to you, Esther. You have worked closely on the ground. Prof, always in the witch camp. He says there is no witch camp he's not visited, and has done some work in. And I know Action Aid Ghana has also been championing the cause, at least since 2005. You have been on the grounds consistently helping, providing livelihood empowerment to these women, among others. How crucial would you say is the passage of this bill to addressing this menace?
Thank you very much. It's now needed more than ever. First, we were not seeing the killings, but from Akuya Dente coming up, there's been a lot of killings, and it's still going on. When you get to the camp, the stories of individual women, elderly women in the camp is very horrible. I know of a woman who spent about 3 or 4 days in the bush before that woman could get to the camp. She's from somewhere, Kumbungu. She was chased through the bush and appeared somewhere and asked where she was. And they said, oh, this is the place. Then can we send you to Patinga camp? And the person sent this woman there. Before they could go and look for where the woman came from. It's so horrible. We still have women who are abused at the camp, sexually at the camp. We have all the children in the camp. Some of them are not from outside who came there.
They were born there.
They were born there.
By these alleged witches?
No, they were not by these alleged witches. We have people from town and the camp owners. We still have it happening in the camp. How long can we keep these women? Some of the women now, they don't even remember where they came from. They don't know their hometown. They don't know there. So how long can they have stayed there for 30 or more years in the camp? We have some who are younger. They can even go to town and work and get money to feed themselves. What about the old ladies? So there are a lot of things that needs to happen and happen now. Otherwise, some of them will just even die. Some of them, their hearts are just leaking. So when it's raining, they will go to one side. They cook in their rooms because they don't have any. They go to the market, sweep the maize that are falling down, come and salt it, and get something to eat. Some camp owners, like these people who are sitting in the camp owners, will collect money from them. Every market day, when you go to market to look for, you have to pay me 5 cedis. It's so terrible. Please, Mr. President, you have to do something about this. you have to go there and see it for yourself. When we are saying this thing, people think it's not the truth. But go there yourself and see the situation of these women in the camps. Some families, the whole family, because the woman was banished, the husband has to follow and come and stay in the camp. So for the bill, it has to be signed. And it has to be signed now.
Right. Prof, and so, you know what? Okay, let me put myself together. No, because you see, I have a mother. My mother has mother. My daughters have a mother who is called my wife. Just because someone accuses her of witchcraft, it has to end a cycle. I mean, really, I don't know how that makes sense to any rational human being talking about these things. But how would the bill cure this particular? Because we are calling on the president here to assent to the bill, give his assent to the bill, and so that it becomes law, so that people can be held liable and all of those things. But how will it address the concern?
Yeah, thank you. I think Auntie Esther and we fly a lot together. To this place, it's so troubling. When I visit the camps and come home, it takes me about a week to get back my normal self, because I can't get the images of the women out of my mind. And when I'm driving away and they are looking at you, you feel so guilty that you have turned your back on them. And some of these women, what is so troubling is that some of these women were not poor people. They were quite enterprising. They were doing well. Some of them, most of them are there because of envy and jealousy from family members. Because they are doing better than their rivals, or their children are doing better in school than their rivals' children, then they are accused of being witches. And the moment they put that label on you as a witch, nobody will stand up for you. And that is the end of your life. Some of the women, I met one woman in Gushegu. She was such an enterprising woman that she was even almost voted for the assembly in her area. And because she was such a forceful lady, the envy, they just labeled her as a witch. She had to leave her family, leave her farm, leave her business, and she is there now sweeping grain from the market with a son to separate it and to be able to feed herself. Why should we allow such a thing to be happening in 21st century Ghana? Why? You are asking, how will the bill help? The bill will help in many, many ways. Right. First of all, the bill is going to be a statement that we don't accept this practice today in Ghana again. That will be a statement that is important to make. Number two, there was witchcraft in many other jurisdictions. Witchcraft was practiced in Europe for many centuries. How did they stop it? By passing bills. They came up with laws to criminalize it. Britain passed the law against witchcraft in 1735. How many years now? Almost 300 years ago. Ghana, we are still 300 years behind. We have to pass this bill now. Third, human beings by human nature, we don't necessarily comply to things because we know that they are good. Sometimes you need to compel them. You need to make people know that there are sanctions. There are consequences. And that's the only time you get them to respond. I joke with friends that when you go to developed countries, the law seems to work there, everything. And I'm like, take all the CCTV cameras away and see what human beings will do. Human beings will always behave when there's something to deter them. And the bill will do that. The bill will be a deterrent. In fact, when the law was announced that a law had been passed and it was put on daily graphic, it sent chills into the communities. And there was a lot of whisper now that, hey, this is not prohibited. Only for them to hear that, the president has not even signed the thing. And there's that, hooray. They even cried, the thing cried, say it's not law yet. So, for me, the bill will do a lot. But finally, The bill is not going to there to stop the thing. The bill will not stop it completely. Laws are not passed to stop crime. Laws are passed to punish crime. Right. There are laws against murder. People still kill. Mm-hmm. There are laws against stealing. People still steal. But when you are caught, you will be dealt with. That is what should be done with this thing, this issue also. Mm. So for me, I want to join my sister, Auntie Esther here, and Mama here, to call on the president, do the right thing. This is the right thing to do. Because the bill is something that will really, if you talk to the police and the law enforcement agencies, they are like, we can't arrest somebody because they have accused somebody for being a witch. Yeah. This bill is against the accusation. It's against the accusation. Without accusation, there will be no murder. Without accusation, there will be no ostracization. Without accusation, there will be no camp. The whole problem starts from the accusation. And this bill will stop that. We went to Gambaga with the MPs, and we were having a conversation with the elders there. And when we were talking about the accusation, and they asked, so what is the bill against? And Honorable Sosu said, it's against accusation. If you accuse somebody, and they say, so they want to stop the thing from the source. Yes. And we say, yes, that's exactly what.
So they know.
So they know.
They are aware.
They know that when that bill becomes law, it will stop from the source. Because there's no accusation, nobody will come to the camp. Mm. The camps will gradually even close by themselves. So the bill will do a lot to help. Mm. And for me, it will put Ghana into an international level where it also takes its seat amongst the nations that uphold human rights and justice issues, especially for the vulnerable people like old ladies and vulnerable people like children. Mm. And Auntie Esther was talking about these abuses in the camp. It's terrible. Ask her. Right now, we are dealing with a case there where the abuses are so terrible. I am now even working on the petition to Shiraj to investigate some of the workers in the camps. The women are being abused, even inside the camps. So we must do something urgently. Mm.
Well, yes. Esther.
What I want to add is that, you know, in some of the camps, there are shrines. There are shrines there. So they send these people to go and validate whether they are witches or not. It's your belief. That is fine. It's your belief. But when they send it and they confirm the person is a witch, then they keep them there. Send them home. We are in our traditional areas, we have the shrines. If you accuse somebody and you send the person, they will neutralize the powers, and the person go back home and do their work. But this one, they will keep them there and abuse them there. So what we are saying, if it's your belief that the shrine can validate or invalidate that if somebody is a witch, go and do it and send your person home. Why do you keep them there? And when we are reintegrating them, some of them, we've been able to send them back to their homes, or more than 600 people. Because when we started working there, there were more than 1,000 people living in the various camps. And there were about 6 camps. We have closed down 2 camps. And there are still more there. So we want this bill to help us to close down the camps. There was one camp we closed. There were people there who said they would never go to their community. We invited their children. The chief gave them a vast land, built for them, not at the camp, built for them elsewhere, farm for them, and let them live. I accept them as members of this community. And they are there, living a happy life. But you kept them in the camp, abused them, and nobody says anything. It's worrying. So we need to do something about it.
Well, like Prof said, we are, compared to Great Britain, we are about 300 years behind because they criminalized witchcraft, yet we are still glorifying it without the passage of this particular bill. So let me come to you, Susan. As it stands now, in the League of Nations, in the international. I mean, we pride ourselves. We have a democracy that is working. Prof doesn't agree anyways. But we respect human rights and all of that. But what will that image of us, what will become of that image if we do not have this law passed ASAP?
The actual fact, I remember during the time of Minister, I think, Nano Oye, when they went to present the report, a country report to the Committee on CEDAW, which is a convention of elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. Now, that particular witchcraft camps issue, was flagged, and Ghana was asked to do everything possible to disband the camps. Now, there were other, contesting, viewpoints. People felt that if they were reintegrated, they would be actually at risk. But then, like what Auntie Esther has said, has just actually, discounted that particular view about they being at risk when they are reintegrated back into their communities. Then there was also the issue of, I think I've lost my train of thought there, but I'll go back to your question. Yes, that said, how does it look like? Basically, we don't look very good. We actually look like a country that does not respect the rights, of women and of children, basically. And sometimes this is picked up on. So if you have the human rights indexes, so you are scored, you are measured. And Ghana's index would actually, be lowered, because the same way in which they measure, women's representation in parliament, where Ghana is ranked way at the bottom, that is how your rankings also, happen to you. Basically, when it comes to human rights, you are downgraded because of, a poor human rights, record. But basically, I would say even before Equidente, the women were being killed. Because even as FIDA, we worked a little bit, in the northern region. And one of our ladies, I think it was Saratu, who was working within that space, should always come back with her reports full of witchcraft, issues, and how, women were actually being murdered. And we actually had a very bad experience where, this particular lady walks into, the office of, at that time, the FIDA office in Tamale, and actually says that, she really wants, legal redress because she had been falsely accused of being a witch, had to go drink a concoction, and basically had to go through so much torture. Now, when we had to follow up with the police said we didn't have a vehicle to go into that particular community. So we gave them our our vehicle. When they went into that community, we are fortunate that our driver understood the local dialect. Basically, then they issued a command to attack, and he escaped with a policeman by a hair's breadth. So our back screen was actually smashed. We came and then we made a petition to the IGP, and nothing has happened basically. And even the police are even afraid, basically, to go into these communities and address these issues. So, like Prof rightly said, the witchcraft law is supposed to what? Stop people from declaring people as witches, accuse them as witches, name them as witches, label them as witches. Then the other one is it actually stops witch hunters and witch doctors from working. That is where the issue is, because they are actually, getting some economic benefits. And so if you are going to actually stop them from working, then they will do all they can to actually stop, the law from being passed. And then they are also protected unfortunately, by some of the community chiefs who actually, see them as, they are part, and they are part of them, and they help them to rule. So basically, that is where they are getting their support from, basically to also maintain that economic, benefits. And so, like you rightly said, and the question you rightly asked, this is what happens if we are not able to address this issue. Our human rights record gets downgraded. And sometimes, if we want to take advocacy, higher up, we can even get, some of these World Bank institutions, money, those who lend us money to actually use their leverage to use it against the government. Now, if you don't disband, these camps, then we cannot give you money. And I think basically, the issue of gender inequality is seen here, because if you are a man and you are labeled or you are known as a wizard, yours is constructive, yours is powerful. But if you're a woman and you are named as a witch, yours is destructive, and you are going to kill. And so we have to get rid of you and then let the man, stay. So you see that the gender inequalities also play out, basically within this space as well, where a man as a wizard or a man as maybe a witch is very powerful, and a woman as a witch, is dangerous, and has to be killed.
So the patriarchy comes back to play right there.
Yeah, just to add to that, women who are there, a lot of them are widows, poor women. If your child is a minister or your child is working in the city,
you can never be a witch.
You can never, nobody will accuse you. But the poor and vulnerable women are the people they accuse. So, I'm becoming emotional. So the issue is more of poverty, power, and gender. So the women are more, the only camp we have 2 or 3 men who are accused of witchcraft is Nyani. But that one, I even have my doubts whether the men there are actually, they've been accused. Because they know there are a lot of goodies that comes in there. So, Mr. President, once again, do it. Do it. And do it. Thank you.
Prof, so as it stands now, we don't have the bill passed into law. And I know you've been doing so much work on the grounds. But what do we do now while we pile pressure for the law to also receive that assent, or for the bill to receive the presidential assent?
Yeah, I remember I was asked this question, and I said maybe what we have to do to the president is to send some witches after him so that he can sign the bill into law. No, but seriously speaking, you see, Auntie Esther has touched something that's very, very serious. In every religion now there's a lot of corruption. Whether you are talking about Christianity, Islam, you get fake people in there. The same thing is happening with this practice of witch hunting. I know all the camp owners, the traditional priests, the shrine owners. I've sat down with them, talked to them. Two of them actually got so comfortable with me. One of them told me, he said, look, Prof, the problem is that sometimes people bring the women and they tell you that you must declare them as witches.
Wow.
You must declare them as witches. And if you don't declare them as witches, you are going to be in trouble. So we have to declare them as witches. The other thing one of them told me was that, he said, look, my father was doing this work for a long time. And this concoction that Esther talked about, that the concoction, whenever the women came there, they drank the concoction and they died. When he became a priest, the women were not dying. And the community came to him and attacked him. Why is it that when your father was here, when we brought the women, they were dying? And you are here now, and the women are not dying. This is the priest himself who told me this. And he said that...
So there's a strong desire for the community itself.
Yes, and he said that the problem is that there was a poisonous herb that his father used to add into the concoction. And he said he's not going to add the poisonous herb. And that if the shrine is really powerful, it should kill the women. And the shrine is not killing the women. So he said, I tell them that me, I'm not supposed to kill the women. It's the shrine. So if the shrine is not killing the women, it's not my problem. So the problem is that there's a lot of corruption in the system too. And to make matters worse, some of the women, when they come, they actually declare them as not witches. If you go to Gambaga, for instance, you have to bring a chicken. And if they kill the chicken, depending on the way the chicken falls, you are declared a witch or you are declared innocent. Some of the women, they go there, they perform the ritual, and the ritual said they are innocent. And then those who accuse themselves say, if they come home, we will still kill them. We still don't agree. So like Auntie Susan said, if you bring the women to the, it's like one of them said, we are like a doctor. You bring the women, even if we declare them as witches, we can cure them. When we cure them, they are supposed to go home. But then the people will say, we don't want them home. So whether they are declared witches or not witches, they are sometimes just stuck there because the community back at home say we don't want them home. So it's not safe for them. But for me, I have told people that, look, if the president picks a call, a phone call even, and talks to the chiefs, and tell the chiefs that, look, I want you to help me stop this practice. If the chiefs come out and make a declaration that all the women who have gone to the camp and they have been declared innocent or they have gone through the ritual can go back home, that is the minimum that they can go back home, and it comes from the chief's mouths, the women will be safe in the village because they respect the traditional rulers.
Right.
But if it is a policeman, are you going to get policeman to stand there and watch over her all the time? It will not work. So it's a simple solution that can be done. But unfortunately, the problem, I think it was not the Susan who touched on this earlier, political will. Political will. A lot of things in Ghana are not happening, not because we don't have the knowledge, not because we don't have the means, but simply because our leaders don't have the political will to do it. Mr. President, please, if anybody can get this political will, it's you. And you, it is in your hands that this bill is. Sign it into law for the sake of these women.
And the good thing is that the president says that he agrees with every single thing in the bill. But then the technicality is the reason why he's unable. And so the Attorney General, his office, is working on it to bring it to Parliament, and then the passage can. But what can we do? What should we do? Aside the pressure. And that's really what I'm looking forward to now. Because as we speak here and have this conversation, by now, another woman has been accused of witchcraft. By now, someone has been sacked from her home because someone is envious of her progress. So what can we do to make sure that we are able to get the word out there? That while we wait for this technicality to be resolved, lives are not lost.
Yeah, so I know that there's even a documentary film that has actually been done on this witchcraft, accusations. And I think what we can do is to see if we can, get access, to it and begin to show a replay, because basically you may not get very willing to speak, but if they are willing to speak to, why not? We can, capture their voices and also play it on either audio or maybe in a podcast series, just to let people become aware and to, really pile the pressure. Now, like I said, we can also get, some of these international bilateral institutions to also make it, as a condition for giving us aid. If you don't disband, you need to disband so we can get money. The same way they try to actually force our hand to actually get an LGBTQ, law passed, basically. So then we know that, if we go that route also, we can get some bilateral institutions to use their leverages to try and get, Ghana to disband this completely, the witchcraft comes, and also assent, to the bill. So what I also want to add my voice and say, Mr. President, assent the bill now.
Esther.
We have worked so hard. When I even came to Northern Region, it's about 12 years ago. They have started working in this. They have started working in this camp for years before I joined. in the Tamale team.
Okay.
And it has been so tiring and so sad to hear the president did not sign for more than a week. I didn't want anybody to talk to me about the alleged witches. In rain, we are there. We are re-roofing their hearts because we thought we can't make that place a permanent home for them. Sending them food, doing health screening for them, doing so many things. And we worked so hard. The day we went to Koforidua, Eugenia, in the night, we were driving from Koforidua to Accra to just the meeting Parliamentary Select Committee. And for this to happen, I actually felt it. And still the women are suffering. So how long can we wait, Mr. President, to get this bill signed so that we can feel a sign of relief for these women? The women are there. There are more than 700 women in these camps. How to feed them is a problem. Stigmatization on their grandchildren and their children. Some of them, we had to even build a school in one of the camps for the children to attend school. So, for me, all what I have to say now is, Mr. President, support these women. That is the only legacy you leave for these women at the camp as a president. Sign the bill for them. They need it, and that will help them. Thank you.
So the chorus is, Mr. President, we beg you, Oga, sign the bill. Please. So you see, Mr. President, the reason why you must sign is because you have told us that you agree. So if you agree, if it is the case that the technicality needs to be resolved, please call Godfrey Dame, the AG. Give him the bill. Let him just change the name and put his name and take it to Parliament so that we can get this done, over and done with. Because as we speak, people are perishing because of this, the non-existence of this law. I'm sure it's time to take some questions. And throughout this session, I heard people are angry, not just spiritually, but physically, because of what is happening to women elsewhere. Who knows, tomorrow I might be labeled a wizard and end up there. Me too, I'm not a wizard. I've not done anything. Then again, even if I were, and it's a spiritual thing, and your shrines are that powerful, let them take the wizardry away, so that at least I'll become me without any spirit and live in the society and help build Mother Ghana. Any questions, please? Yes, so I see hands already up. Can we get a microphone around so people... Yes, right behind you, sir. Okay. Let's start from here. Your name?
I'm Sarah. I'm getting a bit emotional.
Right.
Sarah from Young Urban Women's Movement. And seeing myself as a woman, it means it could happen to me in the next minute. I could be labeled a witch. The issue of witchcraft is more culturally ingrained. And I want to find out, how does the bill interact the local justice system and the conflict resolution mechanism? What role does the traditional authorities play in implementing this bill? And also, how powerful is power that our president can't pass this into law?
Okay, we'll take another question. Right, thank you, Sarah. We'll take another question right behind you.
My name is Margaret. I think this was supposed to be the first series, so that we can also celebrate the affirmative action bill as it's passed into law. But my question is, Auntie Esther, I think in 2016, global campaigners, when we were at Tamale, there were 3 issues that we were supposed to campaign for, which this very one was part of it. Teacher rationalization, and then teaching and learning materials for schools. And I remember in our training, we were being told that if we want to campaign for anything, not there for the closing of the witch camps, because we are not going to meet our target. In fact, the goal that we are looking at the end of the day, we can't achieve. So automatically it was off. So it was left with the two. And as at now, we are still fighting and then talking about the witch camp. I just want to know, the two witch camps that were closed, what were the strategies? Probably maybe now some activists need to put themselves together and battle against it. Maybe some other voices need to, talk about it. So I just want to know the strategies that you had to put across before the two camps were closed, so that if we are doing anything, we will know where to start from and where to end. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll just come to the panelists. Susan, I'm sure you take the first question.
Yes, okay. Yes. So Sarah's questions are quite loaded. So just in case I miss one out, you let me know.
That's fine.
But I've summarized basically looking at the role of traditional rulers and the law. So this has criminalized witchcrafts, naming, declaration, procurement, being a witch hunter, being a witch that. So right now it's criminal. It's criminal for you to name somebody as a witch, criminal for you to declare somebody as a witch. It's criminal for you to label someone as a witch. It is very criminal to declare somebody as a witch. Then it deals with the witch hunters and then the witch finders, people who find. People who make it their policy or their aim to find the witch. And so within the community, they will find the witch. They are the ones who will tell you, who say that this person is a witch. So then when this person is a witch, then that's when they galvanize the community to come against you. And like you heard Prof rightly say, okay, that some of them, they do it for economic benefits, basically. Yes. So traditional rulers, they then have to understand that it is criminal to actually, support such things. So they themselves, their role is for them to understand the law and be able to actually, apply the law. So it's important that we make them aware of what the law says. If they understand what the law is saying, then they will be able to do what? To comply with what the law actually says. So that's the first thing to do. So we need to engage with them. So their role there is to understand what the law is saying and to comply with what the law is also, actually saying. So they have no room at all to support, witch finders or support witch doctors or support those who will name or declare or label somebody as a witch. So they don't have any role at all here. This has been criminalized. It is illegal. So if you are even a traditional leader and you are seen doing this, the law will deal with you, basically. Yeah. And then how powerful is power? Power is powerful. It is really powerful. So for the sake of votes, basically, you find out that, political leaders will actually stop themselves from taking certain actions. So power is powerful indeed. So you are looking at a certain constituency, you want that vote from there to be able to win and to wrest power from your opponent. And so whatever it will take for you to compromise, you will compromise. And so that is the issue now, that we need to really do a lot more advocacy and ensure that the president is able to assent to this anti-witchcraft bill. I hope we have you haven't covered all the spaces.
Yes, you have.
Because it was quite a very tall question. Yeah,
okay,
thank you.
So, Auntie Esther, we'll talk about the strategies you adopted to be able to close down those two witch camps. And then we'll have a conversation with lawyer Francis Xavier Sosu, the man who championed the bill. The president says, well, it shouldn't have come from you. So my Attorney General will bring one and we'll deal with that. So, but let's look at your strategies that you used in closing down those
the first camp was 2014. We reintegrate. When we started working there, we had about 57 alleged witches in that camp. That is Bonyase. So we worked with the camp owner, who is a lady, and other people to reintegrate all these people. At the time we were closing the camp, there were 5 women left in the camp. But we negotiated with their families. if their community is not willing to take them back, you are the mother of this woman. Where will you take your mother? Because we will not allow your mother to stay here again. So they send their away from the camp. So that camp now do not exist anymore. The shrine used to be there, but the last time I passed there, the woman has passed away and the shrine wasn't there again. So that is the first one. And we didn't stop the advocacy, radio program, sensitization. A lot of things went on from 2014 to 2020, where we closed down the second camp, that is Nabuli. There were about 37 women in the camp. We reintegrated, I think, around 17. But the rest, some of them don't even know their hometown. Some of them, too, their families were there. So that is why the Nabuli chief accepted to give them plot of land so that you come and build for this woman here, another person over there, another person. So the 16 members that were left, they built for them, they farmed for them, and they all left the place we call the camp now. They all, now nobody is there again, but they are living their own life at various places. So the strategy has been the same. We go to your family, we negotiate with your family that go to the camp and bring your family member home. We will not even bear the cost. You will come to the shrine, then they will do all the performance, and you take your family member away. There were few ones that a donor in Sweden agreed that we should build for them. There were 3 members. They brought the money, we built for them in their own community, and they moved in. But after that, it has been difficult to get funding to reintegrate these people, because the reintegration, you go to the community not less than 10 times to do the negotiations. But we have been doing it bit by bit. When we go to the camp, they tell us, oh, this woman is gone. The family came and picked. Because the sensitization is still going on, some of them will come back and pick their people. So that has been the...
Okay. Thank you very much, Esther. So let me now introduce Francis Xavier Susu. He's the Member of Parliament for Madina. He's been very, very busy because he has an election to win on the 7th of December. And so he's been combing the constituency. He recently filed, among others, but he's also found time within that busy space to spend time with us to talk about this very important issue. Council, thank you so much for your time. So as it stands now, after a year, President says the Attorney General is working to bring it. We've not seen anything. Have you heard anything that we don't know about?
Well, first of all, let me sincerely apologize for coming late. This morning, we had to meet our municipal security coordination council to establish what we call an inter-party peace committee to ensure that we don't wound ourselves in the upcoming election. And so we had to be there as a sitting MP to also pledge myself to peace before, during, and after the general election. So that kept me a little bit away. Having said that, let me also sincerely commend Action Aid for their active work in this space. And I recall that when I had a chance to visit some of the witches' camps in the north, it was by the support of Action Aid that we're able to visit these women who are unfortunately, very, very unfortunately, held in captivity as witches. Yes, so 1 year down the line, we are still looking up to His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to show some leadership when it comes to protection of the most vulnerable in our society, especially aged women. Because when you look at the category of people who are caught up in this situation, A lot of them are aged. Secondly, mostly uneducated and mostly economically deprived, and may have some level of vulnerability. Either they are widows, or they've suffered some serious divorce, or they have some serious mental health disorder or something. They are just under some stress, and we add to the stress by labeling them as being witches, subjecting them to all kinds of torture and dehumanizing treatment, and eventually they end up in these camps. And that was the reason why it was very important that we bring this piece of legislation, because the legislation was going to provide a legal framework within which the thinking or the manifestation of people's private beliefs, would be fettered. So, in other words, you have a right to believe in witches. Nobody has a problem with that. But to the extent that your belief in those practices is manifested in you labeling another, and making the person an object of scorn and an object of attack, that the law would not allow you. And so it was a very creative law, which I believe was going to solve a major social problem. But unfortunately, the president has refused to assent to that very, very important law. Just recently, the Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection was abroad and actually cited this bill as one of Ghana's efforts to deal with discrimination against women. So I'm hoping that, all the government actors will come together to put some form of pressure on the president, so that as his last legacy to women of Ghana, particularly aged women, he would sign this bill before he leaves office by the 12 midnight of the 6th January 2025.
And so what then is your reaction to the explanation from the presidency as to why? Because the president says, like you mentioned, it's a very creative bill. He says he agrees with everything stated in the bill. The challenge now has to do with its impact on the consolidated fund.
Well, that is quite an unfortunate position to take, because you would have to take a decision as to how much you want to price women who are being killed every day. I believe that no life loss is worth any amount of money that we have. If as a state you cannot commit to protecting the most vulnerable, and you are looking at your fund, it means that you are now playing cha-cha with the life of elderly women. You are now doing economics with the life of elderly women. Can you imagine how much money we spend and we waste in corruption and corruption-related matters? Look at, for example, the National Cathedral, $43 million. Do you know what that would do to all the women who are being alleged to be witches? So for me, I think it's about where we want to place the importance. How much value do you place on human life? Since we passed this bill, more than 7 people have been killed already, again, on account of allegation of witchcraft. So it's about how much, what sense of value do you place on human life and the life of vulnerable women? So that's one. So for me, it is incomparable. The whole argument of consolidated fund is neither here nor there. When you put life or the need to protect the sanctity of life, as far as that is concerned. Secondly, the provision that the president cited is Article 108. Article 108 does not apply to the executive, with all due respect to the president. Article 108 only relates to the Speaker of Parliament or any person presiding at the time a bill is presented to Parliament. So if the person makes a determination that the bill may have a financial implication, the person will simply not admit the bill. But when the person has admitted the bill, it means that the person has made a determination that it doesn't have such implication. And in fact, under Article 108, it's not talking about financial implication. It's talking about a bill that makes a direct demand on the consolidated. For example, making a bill to charge the consolidated fund, where the provisions of the bill are making a direct charge on the consolidated fund. That's the kind of bill we are talking about. This bill is not making any charge on the consolidated fund. In the first place, when you look at the structure of the bill, preventing labeling, people who's maybe leaders who use their offices or spaces to allow for labeling, preventing people coming out or to declaring themselves as witch doctors, and then also providing compensation for people who suffer violence on account of being alleged to be witches, and then the reintegration the reintegration provisions. When we did the fiscal impact analysis of the bill, we realized that government has certain amount of money they commit to LEAP, which they pay to people who are alleged to be witches in camps. When you do a time series of the amount that government spends on that LEAP over the last 10 years, it runs into millions of Ghana cedis. So if you do not have those camps, government will not have to be using public funds in those manners, right? So the fiscal impact analysis clearly showed that the state was going to benefit more from protecting the life of these women than keeping them in these areas which are called witch camps. Then secondly, you realize that the bill was not even mandating or obligating the state to necessarily relocate these women. Because when we went to the field, we realized that some of these areas called the witch camps have already grown into communities, right? And so the whole issue is about disbanding the whole concept of holding women in servitude in areas called witch camps. That's the whole idea. So they are not necessarily going to look for like $1 million to come and say that we are now bringing every woman and taking them to a new area per se. And so the present argument, with all due respect, is really an untenable position.
And I'm sure that there are quite more questions that would come to Lawyer Francis Xavier Sosu on this particular development. And so if you want to ask questions, please put your thoughts together. I'll come back to you shortly and then pick those thoughts. But now, Lawyer, again, and because most of them have already, my panelists have spoken extensively, and that is why I'm central. It's not a one-on-one interview, no. I'm not at GH1 today. Today I'm at Action Aid Ghana. So it's a conversation we are having, and people are also asking that, okay, the bill as it stands now, in terms of implementation, when the president decides to give his assent to it, it becomes law. Yeah. Wouldn't implementation also have its own challenges? Because now, from the discussions we've had since morning, the community members are the ones who are perpetrating this. So it's a whole mindset. And so how will the implementation also go to make it very effective?
In fact, that is a very reason why the bill is crafted the way it was crafted. Because we didn't want to sit in Accra in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana and make any assumptions. So I recall that when we were in the Gambaga chief's palace, a very interesting argument ensued. Okay. And there were people who were there who said, are you saying that there are no witchcraft or something? We can prove to you in the palace that, we can do things right now to prove to you that witches do exist, and so on and so forth. So I recall very well when I took, the center say, I told them that, look, you know what? I am a Christian. And as a believing Christian, I know in the Bible, demons do exist, right? And in the New Testament, there were several instances where Jesus cast out demons. There was never one instance in the Bible where, either in the Old Testament or the New Testament, where an individual goes accusing another of being a witch and subjecting that person to beatings. And so, biblically, the whole concept of even accusing somebody of being a witch doesn't exist, right? In the same way, traditionally, thankfully, I was born in a traditional home. My mother was a victim of trokoshi. So I've seen being in homes where people were alleged to be witches and people would carry knives, and chase after them, and they will run helter-skelter because they are being alleged to be witches. Now, the purpose of this law is not to take away your belief in the existence or non-existence of witchcraft. So if you're in a community and you believe in witches, no problem. It's okay if that's what you believe in. However, you cannot attribute what you believe in to a third person where there are no objective ways of determining what you are thinking. Because it is what you are thinking. It's what you are believing. You went and slept and said you saw somebody chasing you. Who else was with you in the dream to see the person chasing you? How are we to ascertain what you are saying? Because we do not have any objective scientific way of ascertaining what you are claiming, unfortunately, the law is not going to allow you to be accusing another person of that. So the community understood. Okay, so fine. So if we have witches, so how then do we deal with them? Well, you saw those witches through your dream. Is that not so? Deal with them in your dream. I mean, whatever is your source of belief, deal with them in those beliefs. If I'm a Christian, I will go to church, I will pray and cast them away. If you are Muslim, you can go to the mosque and pray them away. If you are traditionalist, you can go to your traditional priest and say that you suspect that somebody is a witch. They can pray over there and cast the witch away. But you cannot go and be accusing another person positively as being a witch and subjecting the person to all kinds of dehumanizing treatment. And so I believe that once this law has assent, the first point of implementation is going to be sensitization. Where now that you have a legal framework, you are now going to, by the support of Action Aid, this is Commission on Human Rights, Administrative Justice, NCC, we now get into the community. Now letting them know the implication of these laws. And if we are not saying that, if you think it's okay if you want to think it. But we are sorry when you think that you cannot accuse another person. Because once you accuse another person, that's the third person you are going to be subjected to all kinds of, discrimination and so on and so forth. And once sensitization, is effectively done, it will translate into change of mind and attitude. And then sensitization with effective prosecution of persons who fall foul of the law would immediately turn people's mind around. Law, we say, is a tool of social engineering. When the law came to remove trokosi as a practice, there were people who were still practicing it. But then, gradually today, it has gone very, very low. Yeah. To the extent that even those who are doing it may want to even hide. Because they know that what they are doing is wrong. It's the same with FGM, right? So this will be a major policy shift from the current state that we find ourselves in.
Okay, please, let's give it up to Lawyer Francis Xavier Susu. So let me go on social media. She, Yelviel Dong, says, in fact, this witchcraft accusation is so serious and it is widespread across the country. Sometime last year, I had a call from someone named Pando requesting help as her mom was accused of being a witch, and by no less a person than her own sibling, who were very educated and even well-to-do than her. Had it not been because the lady's kids were informed and stood by her side, she would have been added to the statistics. Nana Adodankwe Akufo-Addo, please, #Assent Witchcraft Bill. And Sandra says, a topic I always love to hear people discuss, and thumbs up to Action Aid. So you can also send your questions on Facebook and on YouTube, and we'll read the questions out. So now we are opening the floor to questions on this particular bill. Very, very important bill. Any questions? If you don't ask questions, you are telling me, lawyer, I said it all. All right. So, okay. So there are more questions here. Right. So on Facebook, my question is, okay. So we've done this question. It has to do with the affirmative action bill, and someone's called that Muslim women. Okay. So quickly, let me go on YouTube quickly, and I hear there are a lot of questions here. Any questions from this part, though? Or you are assimilating all council said? Yeesh. Okay, right. So I'm currently on YouTube. Okay, so Malik says, grateful to Honorable Susu for stepping up onto this advocacy issue. You are a true gem, champion of human rights. May you soar higher in your aspirations. Lawyer, you are getting fans. So.
Amen.
Peter says, congratulations to Action Aid, Madam Esther and the team for a good job done. Let's keep on pushing for the president to assent this particular bill. Malik says, kudos to the moderator, Joshua. Charlie, I'm getting some.
Yeah.
Thank you, Malik. He also has poverty, power, and gender, negative patriarchal norms. Auntie Esther digs out the underlying root cause. Hence, only vulnerable women are accused. Okay. Okay. I have a question. Why do they only accuse old women, but not young ones? Margaret Juno is asking that. And it's a question to the panel. Why is that it's always an old woman, and mostly because she's also poor. Rich young women are never accused of witchcraft.
Yeah. Maybe let me attempt an answer then. Because I recall when we went to the camps, and I was really interested in knowing why people were often accused. I think that it's more of a cultural thing. It's cultural because people always want to attribute their failures to other people. And unfortunately, when they are attributing their failure, it's difficult for them to accuse others who have made it. Because they believe that in Africa, because we generally believe in a pull him down attitude, they believe that, oh, Nimbana enye yentino, or no some person yensi be ye. Na warrior name kosuntino, on pesa ma warrior ekoso. Esa so you bonintino, or nuntina minti meanwo. Like, it's a very, very, it's a very colloquial way of thinking, but very strangely, that was the kind of feeling I picked from the ground, because I recall that one woman, I asked her, so why were you accused of being a witch? She said her husband married a new wife. And when the husband married a new wife, she started having issues with the husband. Then strangely, anytime, the man spent time with the new wife for some time, spends time with the older, but you know that when you are new, you get more attention. So when they are getting more attention, of course she reacts. So the new wife started complaining that every evening she suffers headache. And she believes that because she was jealous of her as a new wife, she was the one bewitching her. What even complicated the whole thing was that she said one night when she slept, she saw her in her dream. So when she woke up in the morning, she told the man, and strangely, the man, the husband, was one who accused her of being a witch. And from that time, they subjected her to all kinds of treatment, sent her to the shrine, she was beaten, and because she was scared of her life, she ended up in the camp. And so I think it's a very, very backward way of thinking, and I think that every society needs to really move away from this. That's what I think. I'm sure the other panelists may have some perspectives on this.
Lawyer has actually said it. Basically, there's a misfortune. You want to find the cause of your misfortune. And then you're targeting somebody who is, vulnerable and who you can easily, manipulate. And then the issue is, of course, there are some women also who, like Professor Azuma was saying, and we all agreed, that, you are doing well, you are enterprising. And definitely it's arousing a lot of enviness and jealousy. And so we must find a way to get rid of you. And so those are one of the things that they do to target you and then get you out of the system. But then it's also a norm within the community, which needs to be addressed. And the people have been socialized for a long time with regards to this norm, in such a way that even if you were a man and your wife is accused as a witch, you, the man, are helpless in this situation. So I remember when I was doing the research, there was a man whose mother was accused of being, a witch. And he was just carried along with the tide of the accusations and the beatings. So when he was interviewed, he just said, well, since the community people had accused her of being a witch, who was he to, say anything against it? So he had to flow with the tide. Now, we even have one of our focal persons in the community whose wife was also accused of being a witch. So what did he do? He was the one who was supposed to be, as a committee, responsive, a mechanism, follow up on some of these cases and ensure that it is addressed. What he did was to remove the woman from the community, send her, relocate her somewhere else. So he shuttles between his community and her community, basically because, he needs to protect her. and he refuses to follow the norm, but he has to find a way of, managing, the situation. That's how he's managing it. So he's in his community for some time, then he goes back to his woman and then the wife another time. So it's a norm which needs to be dismantled. And I let me add my voice to this, because when I was doing my research, it was Action Aid. I got all my information from way back, I think 2010 or so, 12, 13, 14 years. So 12 I started, so by 13 we had done the thesis. And I got almost all the information from Action Aid. And besides, we had also an office there at that time. And so the reports that were coming actually validated what, Action Aid, has done. So kudos once again to Action Aid. And once again, we say that President Nana Akufo-Addo, please assent this bill. Thank you.
Yeah, so, because she mentioned the norms, I want to just add a little, because as I go around schools and communities, sometimes the question comes up. The most recent one I went, I think it was a Presby Basic School in Medina. And after speaking with them, it was an NCC event. One of the young women, girls, students, actually asked her, what if, they are actually witches? So I asked her, I was just curious, I was like, okay, so what makes you believe somebody is a witch? What makes you think, because you're a student, what makes you think somebody is a witch? She said, when they are envious, when they are, when they are petty, when they don't want you to do well. You see, so I think that there is also a cultural narrative. We need to, there is some form of misinformation and disinformation in the system with respect to the witchcraft issue, practice. And unfortunately, some religious leaders have added up to the notion that is out there. And so there is a need for a careful deconstruction and reconstruction of the narrative around this whole thing known as witchcraft accusation, because people naturally believe that, if somebody is envious, then he's envious, right? Why are you saying that the envies means she's a witch, right? And unfortunately, I think, again, many elderly women fall into this category, because I read a research, I think probably by Suntaba, and about the mental health status of persons who were accused of being witches. You know that the natural biological timetable of women attain menopause earlier than men, right? And so when they grow much older and they attain this menopause, and sometimes it makes them a little bit overbearing, like complaining about everything, and people misunderstand, they misconstrue these characteristics as before, because baby and son and that kind of thing. And so there's a narrative out there that I'm sure that when we have a law, we can now, based on the legal framework, begin to reconstruct the conversation around this thing. I'm sure that is also part of the reason why a lot of elderly women are accused of being witches. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I saw your hand. Okay. So let me go to Eugenia. Please, can you pass Eugenia a microphone for me so that she would let us know her thoughts?
Thank you. I think mine is to throw a challenge to the presidency. Honorable Sosu and the parliamentarians went to the witchcraft, the camps. Right. And I think that informed some of the decisions Honorable Sosu took. That informed the support for the bill when we went to Koforidua by the committee.
Yeah.
So I think I'm trying to challenge the president as a human rights lawyer. He should visit the camps. He should see it for himself. Maybe that will move him to assent to the bill. So before he steps down, I throw him that challenge.
I agree.
Visit the camps and make a decision. Thank you.
You know,
We'll provide a bus.
you know, and let me add to that, right? Because I recall that the first day we visited the camps, when we go back in the night, when we get back, we do the debriefing, right? From the police to social workers, the MPs that were there, everybody was like, this bill must be passed now. Like, everybody was like, we don't need to wait any day more. Like, they felt like, look, this thing must happen now. So I think that many people out there really do not appreciate the extent of what we're talking about. So I really, really would support that call. That President Dankwa Akufo-Addo, please visit the witch camps. I mean, you can visit there with your Attorney General, with the Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection, with Shraj. You have a whole lot of, array of people who work on this area. Thankfully, Shraj has waded into the conversation and advised that the President does the needful. So I think the President must visit the witch camps. Yeah.
Okay. So the hashtag, President visits the witch camps. Now. N-O-W in capital letters. You had a concern, a question?
Yes.
Okay.
My question had to do with what Noya said, and I think he has just called on the person.
Okay.
You know, when the Affirmative Action Bill was being passed, as young women, we were at the parliament before the bill was read for the communities, and then on the third day, it was being passed. So in fact, we celebrated. We were happy. So we will also be happy when this is being called upon to be read again or to be looked at the parliament, and then we will be there, and then we will be told that, oh, today we've been able to pass the bill into a law, or it has been signed, so that we will all celebrate together. So I think it's a good thing to be done. But I want to ask, should we have a positive mindset? That he said that before the president leaves his office, he's going to sign this bill. Should we have a positive mindset that by the close of the year, this bill is going to be passed into a law? Thank you.
Yeah. I think that, okay, so now we have a bill passed into law. And we are waiting for presidential assent so that it can now be effective. Now, given what the president said, I would have thought that if the president really, really meant what he said with respect to the bill being in principle good, supporting it in principle, what is support in principle if you don't add it, if you don't back it with action, right? Merely saying that it's a good thing, we all like it, doesn't mean that it works. I think the only time this becomes complete is the president saying that, oh, I think it's a great stuff, and I want the state to commit resources to even the reintegration. So we now know that because it will really have a financial implication, I want to even reintroduce it under a state of emergency because I've seen women dying, and I care about women dying. So I want to introduce the bill within 2-3 days because we've already done the motions and everything already, so we can have it passed, so I will assent to it. Then we will know that the president really means what he's saying. But it's been 1 year since the president wrote to Parliament and said, I believe I love the bill in principle, but I would allow the Attorney General to reintroduce on my behalf. It hasn't come. So, the low-hanging fruit that we have here is that we have a law. Yeah. Very soon, the president has less than maybe some 3 months or so for his tenure to come to an end. Chances are that maybe he may not be able to come back to Parliament for to do all that he may want to do. But a law, after it's been signed into law, can always be amended. If the president really believes that there's something else that can be done, he can always bring an amendment on behalf of the government. So I believe that the hashtag must be the president must sign the bill now and visit the witch camps now.
All right, so we take the last question now. After that, we are done. Please, Kelly, pass on.
Yes, thank you very much. And then thank you to our panelists as well. I'm learning a lot. From our first series, a leadership thought series, to this, I've been questioning myself. What role is the traditional council? I mean, like we are engaging our chiefs at the grassroots level as such. What role are they playing in ensuring that, affirmative action bill is signed, the alleged witchcraft policy or law is being signed? What role are they? Because I'm not hearing anything from them. Right. What role are they playing? Okay. Thank you.
So the traditional councils, the traditional authorities, what noise are they also making to power pressure on the government? What should they be doing? Esther, take it.
We've not heard much from them, right. But there are some traditional rulers who have, I won't mention their names now, because some of them have even met their subjects and discussed this bill and how it will affect them. One of the chiefs said, if somebody accuses somebody in your jurisdiction, bring the person to me. Okay. I will deal with it. Nice. And I know what I'll do it. We engaged, before the parliamentarians came, we have engaged the Regional House of Chiefs in Northern Region. And they are in support. But it's a traditional issue. It's a cultural issue. So some of them don't want to come out. But some of them are prepared, because we're trying to have a documentary on what the chiefs are saying on this. I'm sure when we finish, we will play it on the national television. Right. Some of them are prepared to speak. Okay. So we are still engaging them. And I think it's better we finalize it and play it before it even comes out. Okay. So it's something most of them are prepared. Some of them fear their subjects, their reaction. So we will continue doing this. So, Mr. President, we are all for you. Sign for us now. Wow.
Yeah, so also to add to the traditional rulers and what they are doing, I think that the traditional rulers can actually do a little bit more to call on the president to sign this bill. Look, all of us were born by women, right? So everyone must be seen as working towards protection of women. And so I would beg our traditional rulers. Unfortunately, we don't have a law. If, for example, the law has been signed, it would have been easier to now re-engage, the traditional councils and go and explain, do like a breakdown of the law, what it means to them. Then you meet assemblies, what it means to them. You can go to unit committee levels. Then that's how the law then is broken down into pieces to people. But at this stage, you don't have a law. And that's why I think the traditional council, the regional houses of chiefs, the national house of chiefs, the eminent chiefs, our queen mothers, all of them will have to speak about this matter. The truth is that many traditional areas have moved. When you read the history of witchcraft accusation, I was surprised about a month ago to note that even those days in Ashanti Kingdom, witchcraft accusation was one of those accusations that could even attract like death penalty. But they were tried by the chief. They were like, you were properly tried. It's like a whole system of a judicial system that tries you, so that when you are found guilty, then you are then punished in a particular way. Some of them by banishment, others by death, and so on and so forth. But all those things they've all changed. And so the problem is that what we are having now is a remnant of those cultural practices and cultural thinking, which we are now trying to use law to cure. So, Mr. President, please sign the bill now and visit the witch camps now.
Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for our panelists. Oh, I wish we could continue the conversation till like 6 p.m. But some of you, see. But you see, some of you were here very, very early, and we appreciate your time so much. My panelist, Francis Xavier Kojo-Sosu, a member of parliament for Medina, and also the NDC's candidate for the 2024 general elections in Medina. Council, thank you so much for your time. We have also had Madam Esther Boateng. She is a development worker. She's also the Northern Regional Programs Manager of Action Aid Ghana. Madam Esther, thank you so much. And Susan has been here with me. She started with me, and she's ended with me. Susan Aite, she's Acting Executive Director of the Federation of Women Lawyers. Thank you so much for your time. Please, let's hear it for them once more as they take their seats here. Thank you so much. And for those of you who joined us on social media, we salute you. You are the real MVPs. Thank you so much for being a part of this very important conversation, as well as those who join us here at the studios, wonderful studios put together here at the ActionAid headquarters. But before we go, I'd like to invite the man who started with us, the HOP for ActionAid Ghana, Mr. Justin Bayo, to give us his remarks before we call it a day. Please, let's welcome him. Thank you, Master. You can please take your seat.
Thank you. It's been great. Okay, it's been great. I've been in and out of the proceedings here. I followed online. I also made some comments. Actually, when we conceived this whole concept, we didn't know how it would play out. But now we are quite aware that there's the need for us to continue with such programs. Either follow up subjects related to what we have done today, or some independent topics will have to come up. But let me use this opportunity to thank the panelists. You've been great, wonderful, introduced us to new ideas, concepts, knowledge that we were not even thinking about. And therefore, we have to do some more research into that in the near future. And as you have said, it must be now. Yeah. The president must go there, what? Now. And he must sign the bill into law now. And on that note, I bring this session to a close, thanking everybody and saying that we'll call on you in the near future to be part of another upcoming one, maybe in 2024. Thank you. Let me also thank you.
2024.
2025, yes.
You see, what he's trying to say is that we'll have another one before the end of the year.
Hopefully, because we need funding, and we are praying that some more money will come in.
Definitely.
And we'll be able to do that. Jacqueline, do you have something to say?
I just want to also extend our gratitude to our reporters and also reiterate that the campaign and the hashtag that has been mentioned, we'll still continue with it. So when we come to your media houses for the media engagement, please be very nice to us. And to our panelists, we'll be calling on you to support us with some radio engagements and visitations as well. So that will be all. And thank you so much once again. We'll take the interviews and a group picture before we leave here. Over to you, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you see, they refuse to thank me, but me, I'm thanking myself. So I'm thanking myself for being a part of today too. And you, all the wonderful people here, please clap for yourselves. Yeah, because you are wonderful people. But that's how we draw the curtains, but we are not dropping the curtain, we are not drawing the curtains on the conversations on social media. So the hashtags, President should assent to the bill now. He should also visit the witch camps now. Let the conversations continue. My name is Kojo Mensah. It's been wonderful being with you through the morning to the afternoon. Do have a wonderful day.
And